In Harrowmere, a canal town where cruelty runs deeper than its waters, Alara Vance has survived 23 years of being told she's too damaged to deserve love. Her own mother's voice, sharp as broken glass, delivers the verdict in front of the entire market. She's too broken to be loved. But when a dangerous stranger with eyes like steel watches her refuse to break, when their skin touches and the world explodes into impossible color, when ancient magic recognizes what hatred tried to bury, everything Alara thought she knew about herself shatters. This is her story. Stay until the end. Hit that like button. Drop your city in the comments. Let's begin. The morning Alara Vance's life split open started like every other. Gray sky, cold wind off the canal, and the weight of her mother's disgust sitting heavy in her chest like stones. She was bent over her stall at the Harrowmere market, hands deep in indigo dye, when Viren Vance's voice cut through the crowd noise like a knife through silk. Look at her, 23 years old and still playing in the dirt like a child. Alara's fingers stilled in the blue water. She didn't look up. Didn't need to. She could feel her mother's presence the way you feel storm clouds gathering, that particular quality of air before lightning strikes. Mother, her voice came out steady. That was something. The Harwick order needs... The Harwick order. Viren's laugh was cold enough to frost glass. You think Lord Harwick cares about your little hobby? You think anyone in this town gives a damn about your colors? Around them, the market had gone quiet. Not the comfortable quiet of people minding their business. The hungry quiet of spectators waiting for blood. Alara forced her hands to keep moving, smoothing the linen through the dye bath with careful precision. Triple soak. That's what made her blue sing while everyone else's faded to gray. But her mother had never cared about technique. I have 3 commissioned pieces this week, Alara said quietly. The income. Viren stepped closer, and Alara could smell her perfume, roses and something bitter underneath. You want to talk about income? About what you cost me. Don't engage. Don't react. Alara had learned this young. Disappear inside yourself. Make your face a mask. Survive until she leaves. But Viren wasn't finished. You know what Merchant Frost said to me yesterday? Her mother's voice rose, projecting now, performing for the crowd. He said he'd considered a marriage arrangement for his second son, the slow one. Alara's chest tightened, but she kept her face blank. And do you know what I had to tell him? Viren's voice dripped with theatrical disappointment. I had to tell him the truth, that my daughter is... Don't! The word came out before Alara could stop it. Is broken. Viren finished the sentence like she'd been waiting for the interruption, like she wanted the audience to see Alara try to defend herself. Too damaged, too sharp-edged and strange, too much work for any man to take on. The words landed like fists, each one a blow Alara had learned to absorb. Around them, she could hear the whispers starting. Poor Viren. Must be so hard having a daughter like that. I heard she throws fits, won't speak to people. Alara's hands had started shaking in the dye water, turning the blue cloudy. She pulled them out slowly, carefully, like sudden movement might shatter what little composure she had left. That's not... she started. She's too broken to be loved. Viren delivered the final verdict with the calm certainty of someone stating a simple fact. The sky is gray. Water flows downhill. Alara Vance is unlovable. The market held its breath. And Alara did what she'd always done. She absorbed it, tucked the pain somewhere deep where it could join all the other wounds, smoothed the crimson linen in front of her with trembling fingers, over and over, like the repetitive motion might give her something to hold on to. She didn't see the man watching from across the bridge, didn't notice the way his entire body had gone still at Viren's words. Didn't know that Cale Arden, ruler of the Eastern Territories, war-bred and raised in violence, a man who'd killed his first enemy at 14 and never apologized for the brutality his life required, was watching her with an expression that would have terrified anyone who knew him. Because he wasn't seeing weakness. He was seeing compression, control, power forced into impossible smallness. He was seeing someone who'd learned to survive by making herself invisible. And something in him, something old and fierce and not entirely human, recognized her. Varen was still talking, her voice fading into background noise as she turned to accept sympathy from other merchants. The performance was over. Alara had played her part. She went back to her dye work with mechanical precision, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Across the bridge, Kale started moving. He'd come to Haramir on business, a trade negotiation that should have taken 3 days maximum. The canal town was unremarkable, its politics predictable, its people ordinary. But that was before he'd seen her, before he'd watched a woman absorb cruelty with the kind of practiced endurance that spoke of years, decades, of systematic erosion. Before he'd felt the first stirrings of something his advisors had warned him about since he was old enough to understand what he was. The marking doesn't ask permission, they'd said. When it comes, you'll know, and everything you thought you controlled will burn. He'd laughed at them. He was 31 years old and had bedded half the noble houses between here and the Eastern Sea without feeling anything more than pleasant friction and political advantage. He'd assumed he was immune. He'd been wrong. Kale moved through the market with the kind of deliberate calm that made people step aside without quite knowing why. He wasn't particularly tall, maybe 6 feet, and he dressed in plain traveling clothes that shouldn't have drawn attention. But there was something about the way he moved, the way he looked at things, like a wolf pretending to be a dog. He reached Alara's stall and stopped. She didn't look up. Her focus was absolute, hands moving through the dye water, lifting the linen, checking the color against the light. Professional. Practiced. Hiding. The blue, he said quietly. It's different from the others. Her hands froze. For a moment she didn't move at all, and Kale wondered if she'd even heard him. Then slowly, so slowly it looked painful, she raised her eyes. Gray. Her eyes were gray like winter water, and currently red-rimmed from either tears or dye chemicals, probably both. Triple soak method, she said. Her voice was hoarse. Most merchants can't be bothered. Takes too long. But it holds. It wasn't a question. She blinked. Yes. Show me. What? Kale gestured to the fabric. Show me how it's different. I want to understand. Something flickered across her face. Confusion, suspicion, the reflexive wariness of someone used to traps disguised as kindness. But she reached for a comparison piece anyway. A standard blue linen from another merchant's stall, probably. She held it next to her work. See how this one... She stopped, cleared her throat, tried again. The standard method produces a lighter hold. It'll fade in sunlight, bleed in the first wash. Mine... She smoothed her work with careful fingers. Mine doesn't fade. The color bonds deeper. It becomes part of the fiber. Kale leaned closer, genuinely interested. He'd negotiated trade agreements for dyes before. His territory produced some of the finest madder root in the eastern provinces, but he'd never paid attention to technique. What's your mordant ratio? Her eyes widened slightly. You know dyeing? I know commerce, and I know quality when I see it. He met her gaze directly. You didn't answer the question. 1 part alum to 4 parts water, copper sulfate modifier, depending on the base shade I want. She was watching him warily, like he might be mocking her. Why do you care? Because your work is exceptional, and you're selling it for a fraction of what it's worth. Alara's breath caught. She pulled back slightly, putting distance between them. I don't need charity. Good. I'm not offering it. Kale kept his voice level, matter of fact. I'm pointing out that you're undervaluing yourself, probably because everyone around you has convinced you that's all you deserve. The words hit like a slap. He watched her absorb the blow, saw her face close down into careful blankness. You don't know anything about me. I know you've been standing here for the last 20 minutes pretending you're fine while your hands shake hard enough to ruin your dye work. His voice was quiet, almost gentle, deadly. I know the woman who just eviscerated you in front of half the market is your mother. And I know you're about 3 seconds from either throwing that dye water in my face or breaking down completely. Alara stared at him. Her throat worked like she was trying to swallow glass. Who the hell are you? Someone who sees you. The words fell between them like stones into still water. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Alara laughed, a short, bitter sound that had no humor in it. Right. And I'm supposed to believe some random stranger just sees me out of nowhere? That you just happen to notice me and decide I'm special? She shook her head, reaching for the anger because anger was safer than whatever else was trying to surface. I've heard that line before, usually right before someone tries to. She stopped, bit down on whatever she'd been about to say. Cale didn't push, he just waited. Finally, she looked at him again. Really looked this time, taking in the expensive cut of his supposedly plain clothes, the calluses on his hands that didn't match merchant work, the way he stood like someone used to people obeying without question. "You're not a traitor," she said slowly. "No." "What are you? Does it matter?" "Yes." He almost smiled. "Why?" "Because people like you don't talk to people like me unless you want something." Her voice was flat, tired. "So either tell me what you want or leave me alone." Fair enough. Cale respected directness. "I want to buy your work. All of it. And I want to commission more." Alara's expression didn't change. "No." "You haven't heard my offer." "Don't need to." She turned back to her dye work, dismissing him. "I said no." Cale felt something shift in his chest. Not anger, he wasn't used to being refused, but it didn't bother him. This was something else. Something like recognition. She wasn't playing games, wasn't testing him or fishing for a better offer. She just didn't trust him. Smart woman. "What if I told you I could sell your work in the Eastern Territories for 10 times what you're getting here?" Her hands paused in the water. "I'd say you're lying." "I'm not." "Then I'd say there's no such thing as free money, and whatever you want in exchange isn't worth it." "What makes you think I want something in exchange?" She looked at him then, and the expression in her gray eyes was so old, so tired, it made Cale's chest tighten. Everyone wants something. Before he could respond, she reached for a new bolt of fabric. Her fingers were still shaking. Cale watched those trembling hands and made a decision. He reached out, slowly, telegraphing the movement, and steadied the fabric she was holding. Their fingers brushed, and the world caught fire. It started as a pulse, warmth racing up from the point of contact, spreading through Cale's arm like liquid gold. Not painful, not even unpleasant, just there, undeniable and alive. Then the color came. Molten gold bloomed between their skin like ink dropped in water, swirling with deep forest green. His colors, he realized with shock, alive and moving like something conscious. Alara gasped and jerked back, but not before he saw the same colors racing across her fingers, disappearing under her sleeves. They both stood frozen, staring at each other. The phenomenon lasted maybe 3 seconds. Then it vanished like it had never existed, leaving only the faint smell of ozone and the thundering of Cale's pulse in his ears. "What?" Alara's voice came out strangled. "What the hell was that?" Cale couldn't answer. His mind was reeling, processing implications he didn't want to accept. The marking bond. Here. Now. With her. Fuck. "I don't—" he started, but Alara was already backing away, her face pale. "Don't touch me, don't—" She looked around wildly, like checking if anyone else had seen. The market crowd was too far away, too absorbed in their own business. Just them. Just this. That didn't happen. That wasn't real. "Alara, how do you know my name?" Her voice pitched up, panic bleeding through. "I never told you my name." He'd heard her mother say it, but telling her that would only make this worse. "I heard—" "Stay away from me." She was gathering her things now, hands moving frantically, knocking over containers. Dye water splashed across the wooden stall. "Whatever that was, whatever you did, I didn't do anything." "Liar!" The word came out sharp enough to cut. She finally looked at him directly, and her eyes were wild, terrified. "I don't know what kind of game this is, but I'm not playing. You hear me? I'm not—" She grabbed what she could carry and fled. Cale watched her go, his hands still tingling where their skin had touched. Behind him, a merchant called out, "You interested in purchasing those fabrics, friend?" She left them behind. He turned slowly. The merchant was already reaching for Alara's abandoned work, her triple-soaked blues, her carefully measured crimsons. "Touch those and you lose the hand." His voice was quiet, conversational. The merchant's hand froze mid-reach. He looked at Cale's face and went pale. Yes, sir. Of course, sir. I didn't mean—" "Wrap them, carefully. I'll be back for them in an hour." Cale left before the man could stammer another response. His mind was racing, cataloging facts. 1. The marking bond was real and had just activated. After 31 years of nothing, it had chosen now. Chosen her. 2. She'd felt it too. That much was obvious from her panic. 3. She was running. From him, from what had happened, probably from everything. 4. He couldn't let her run. The last thought should have disturbed him more than it did. Cale had spent his entire adult life maintaining control. His position demanded it. Ruling the Eastern Territories meant balancing a dozen competing noble houses, managing resources, making decisions that affected thousands of lives. He couldn't afford to be ruled by instinct or emotion. But the bond didn't care about his control. It had recognized its match and was already sinking hooks into him, pulling him toward her with the inevitability of gravity. He needed information. Fast. 20 minutes later, he was sitting in a shadowed corner of the Broken Anchor, Harrowmere's only halfway decent tavern, listening to Gareth, a local merchant he'd done business with before, explain Alara Vance's history over cheap ale. "You want to know about the Vance girl?" Gareth shook his head. "That's a sad tale, friend. Her mother's a piece of work. Viren Vance, married into money young, widowed within 5 years. Rich as sin and twice as cold." "And Alara?" "Strange one. Quiet. Keeps to herself mostly." Gareth leaned in, voice dropping to gossip level. "Word is she's got some kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, bits? Episodes? Viren says she's unstable, unreliable." Cale's jaw tightened. "Is she?" "Hell if I know. She does good work, I'll give her that. But she's odd. Won't look you in the eye half the time. Gets skittish if you move too fast or talk too loud." He shrugged. "Viren's been trying to marry her off for years. No takers. Who wants damaged goods?" Cale's hand clenched around his ale mug hard enough to make it creak. "Careful, friend," Gareth said, misreading the reaction. "That's quality glasswork." "Where does she live?" "The workshop down by the southern canal bend. Stone building with the blue door. Can't miss it." Gareth squinted at him. "You thinking of doing business with her?" "I'd reconsider. Her mother's impossible to deal with, and the girl herself is... Thank you for your time." Cale dropped coins on the table, more than necessary, and left. The workshop was exactly where Gareth said it would be. Kyle stood outside for a long moment, studying it. Stone walls, thick enough to hold heat. A blue-painted door that had seen better days. Small windows up high, currently dark. He could hear movement inside. The splash of water. Something being dragged across stone. He knocked. The sound inside stopped immediately. "Go away!" Alara's voice came through the door, muffled but clear. "I need to talk to you." "I said go away." "Alara." "What? I don't care what you want." Her voice was shaking now. "I don't care who you are or what you think you felt or any of it. Just leave me alone." Cale closed his eyes, fighting the urge to kick the door down. The bond was pulling at him. She's right there. Just take her. Make her listen. Make her understand. But he'd learned control in a brutal school. "I'm not leaving," he said quietly. "Not until you let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. It was some kind of trick, sleight of hand, something." "You know it wasn't." Silence. Then, "What do you want from me?" The question was so tired, so defeated. Cale pressed his palm flat against the door, wishing he could reach through wood and stone and all her defenses to touch her again, feel that impossible color blooming between them. "I want to tell you the truth." "I don't believe in truth." "Then I want to tell you what happened, what's happening, and then you can decide." More silence. He could almost hear her thinking, weighing risks, calculating odds. Finally, "You have 5 minutes, and you stay on that side of the door." "Agreed." He heard her move closer, pictured her standing just inside, probably with some kind of weapon in hand. "Good. She should be careful." "Talk," she said. Kyle had faced enemy warlords, hostile nobles, assassins in the dark. He'd negotiated treaties and ended wars with nothing but words. But explaining this to a woman who'd just been publicly humiliated by her own mother? This might be the hardest conversation of his life. "My name is Kyle Arden," he started. "I rule the Eastern Territories. Have for the last 9 years." He heard her sharp intake of breath. Before you say anything, yes, I should have told you immediately. I didn't because I wanted you to talk to me like a person, not a title. He kept his voice level, factual. I came to Harrowmere for trade negotiations, routine business. I was supposed to leave tomorrow. Supposed to? That was before. He paused, choosing his words carefully. There are things about my bloodline that aren't common knowledge. Instincts, abilities, things that sound like myths until they're happening to you. I don't understand. Neither did I. Not until today. He took a breath. What you felt when we touched, that wasn't magic or tricks. It's called a marking bond. It's rare, ancient, and it's supposed to recognize compatible pairs. The silence that followed was so complete he wondered if she'd left. Then, you're insane. I know how it sounds. Compatible pairs? Like some kind of, fated mates bullshit? Her voice was rising now, panic threading through. You expect me to believe that? I don't expect you to believe anything. I'm just telling you what I know. And what you know is that we're supposed to be compatible? She laughed, bitter and sharp. You don't know me. You don't know anything about me except what you saw at the market today. So whatever you think you felt, it wasn't just me feeling it, Alara. Silence. You felt it too, he continued quietly. The colors, the heat. Tell me you didn't. It was... She stopped, started again. It doesn't matter what I felt. Even if what you're saying is true, which it's not, but even if it was, I'm not interested. I don't want this. I don't want you. The words should have stung. Instead, Cale heard what she wasn't saying. I don't want you. Okay, he said simply. Okay? She sounded confused. That's it? That's it. You said no. I'm not going to force you into anything. But the bond doesn't override your choice. He meant it. Whatever instincts were howling at him to claim her, to make her understand, to take, he was still capable of control, still capable of being more than his worst impulses. You're a person, not a prize. If you don't want this, that's your right. He could hear her breathing on the other side of the door, fast, shallow. So you'll leave? She asked carefully. Just like that? No. But you just said, I said I won't force you. I didn't say I'd leave. Cale kept his voice gentle but firm. I'm going to stay in Harrowmere. I'm going to come by your stall tomorrow, and the day after that. Not because I'm trying to pressure you, but because I want to know you. Because I think you're extraordinary. And because even if the bond didn't exist, I'd still want to understand how you turn water into color, like it's breathing. You're lying. I'm not. Why would you... Her voice cracked. Why would someone like you care about someone like me? And there it was. The real question underneath all the fear and panic. Cale pressed his forehead against the door, wishing he could see her face. Because I watched you survive something that would have destroyed most people. I watched you absorb cruelty like it was nothing, like you're so used to it you've developed armor. And instead of getting angry or bitter, you just kept making beautiful things. He paused. That's not weakness, Alara. That's power. Real power. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. He heard something that might have been a sob, quickly stifled. 5 minutes are up, she said, voice thick. Alara, please go. He wanted to argue, wanted to stay right there until she opened the door and let him in. Instead, he stepped back. I'll be at your stall tomorrow, he said quietly. You don't have to talk to me, but I'll be there. He walked away before she could respond. Behind him, he didn't hear the door open, but he did hear, very faintly, the sound of someone sliding down to sit on the floor, and the quiet, desperate sound of crying that had been held back too long. The next morning, Alara didn't go to the market. She told herself it was because she had work to do, real work, commission pieces that required attention. Not because she was afraid of seeing him again, not because her hands hadn't stopped shaking since yesterday, not because every time she closed her eyes, she saw gold and green blooming between their fingers like something alive. She'd been in her workshop since before dawn, trying to lose herself in the familiar rhythm of her craft. Heat the water. Measure the mordants. Soak, wring, soak again. It wasn't working. Her mind kept circling back to what he'd said. The marking bond. Compatible pairs. Insane. It had to be insane. Except she'd felt it. Whatever it was. That pulse of warmth, the impossible colors, the sense of something recognizing her. And that was somehow more terrifying than if he'd been lying. Because if it was real, if any of what he'd said was true, then it meant the universe had decided something about her life without asking permission. And Alara had spent 23 years learning that she didn't get choices, didn't get control. Her mother had made sure of that. She was heating a fresh batch of dye water when she heard the knock. Her whole body went rigid. He'd said he'd be at the market, at her stall, not here. Unless... Alara, her mother's voice cut through the door like a blade. I know you're in there. Worse. So much worse. Alara considered not answering, considered pretending she wasn't home. But Viren would just keep coming back. She always did. She opened the door. Her mother stood on the threshold in forest green silk, expensive, perfectly tailored. Everything Alara's dye-stained work clothes weren't. Her hair was pinned up in elaborate braids, her face carefully painted. She looked at Alara like one might look at something mildly distasteful. You weren't at the market this morning. I had work here. Work? Viren's lip curled. Is that what you're calling hiding now? Alara's jaw tightened, but she didn't take the bait. Was there something you needed, Mother? Oh, don't take that tone with me. Viren pushed past her into the workshop, her nose wrinkling at the smell of dye and steam. This place is disgusting. I don't know why you insist on... Mother? Alara's voice came out flat, tired. If you're just here to criticize, I have actual work to do. Viren turned, and for a moment something like genuine surprise crossed her face, like she hadn't expected resistance. Then her expression hardened. I heard something interesting from Merchant Caro this morning. Alara's stomach dropped. She said a stranger was asking about you yesterday. A well-dressed man, expensive clothes, expensive manners. Viren's eyes narrowed. Said he seemed very interested in your work. It was nothing. Nothing? A man of obvious means approaches my daughter, and it's nothing? Her mother laughed, but there was no humor in it. Don't be stupid, Alara. Men like that don't notice girls like you unless they want something. I know that. Do you? Viren stepped closer, and Alara fought the urge to back away. Because if you're entertaining some fantasy that he's interested in you for anything other than quick entertainment, I'm not. Good, because you need to understand something. Her mother's voice went cold, clinical. You are not the kind of woman men marry. You're not even the kind they keep as mistresses. You're the kind they use and discard. The words landed like physical blows. Alara had heard variations of this her entire life, but they never hurt less. Are you finished? Vireni's eyes flashed. Excuse me? I asked if you were finished. Alara was shaking now, but her voice stayed level. Because I have work to do. Real work. Work that actually pays. How dare you? How dare I what? Something in Alara was cracking. Something that had been compressed too long, held under too much pressure. How dare I try to earn a living? How dare I not rely on you for everything? How dare I exist in a way you didn't explicitly approve? Viren's hand came up fast. The slap cracked across Alara's face like lightning. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Viren lowered her hand slowly, her expression unreadable. You will not speak to me that way. Alara's cheek was burning, her eyes watering from the impact, but she didn't cry. Wouldn't give her that. Then don't come to my workshop. Your workshop? Viren's voice dripped venom. You mean the building I paid for? The supplies I bought? The business I set up so you'd have something to do with your miserable life? You did all that so you could control me. I did all that because you're incapable of functioning on your own, her mother was yelling now, all pretense of composure gone. Do you think anyone else would put up with you? Your moods? Your strangeness? The way you freeze up and can't speak when people talk to you? That only happens when you're around. The words came out before Alara could stop them. Viren went very, very still. What did you just say? Alara's heart was pounding so hard it hurt, but she'd started now. Might as well finish. I said it only happens when you're around, or people like you, people who've decided I'm broken and treat me accordingly. Her hands were clenched so tight her nails were cutting into her palms. I'm fine with my actual customers. I'm fine with strangers. I'm fine with everyone except the people who've spent my entire life telling me I'm too damaged to deserve basic respect. Verena's face had gone pale. You ungrateful little... I'm grateful. Alara cut her off, voice shaking but determined. I'm grateful for the money, for this building, for not starving in the streets. But that doesn't mean I have to accept you treating me like I'm worthless. I treat you like what you are. And what's that? A mistake. Verena's voice was quiet now. Dead. A burden I've carried for 23 years. A constant reminder of everything I lost when your father died and left me with you. The words should have destroyed her, should have sent her crumpling to the floor like they always did. Instead, Alara felt something strange. Clarity. Cold, sharp clarity that cut through all the fear and doubt like a blade. Then stop, she said simply. Veren blinked. What? Stop carrying me. Stop coming here. Stop pretending you care about what I do or who I talk to or any of it. Alara met her mother's eyes directly for the first time in years. You want to be free of me? Here's your chance. Walk away. I'll survive. You'll fail within a month. Maybe, but at least I'll fail on my own terms. They stared at each other across the steam-filled workshop. 23 years of violence disguised as love. 23 years of systematic erosion pretending to be care. Veren spoke first. If I leave now, I'm not coming back. Good. I mean it, Alara. If you do this, if you choose this ridiculous independence fantasy, you're on your own. No more money, no more support, nothing. I understand. You'll lose this building, the business, everything. Then I'll lose it. Alara's voice didn't shake. But it'll be my choice. For a long moment, Veren just stared at her daughter like she was seeing a stranger. Then she turned and walked to the door. You're making a mistake. Probably. Veren paused on the threshold, her back to Alara. He won't stay, you know. That man asking about you. Men like that never stay for girls like you. I don't care. It was a lie. But it was her lie. Veren left without another word. The door closed, and Alara stood in the middle of her workshop, alone, shaking, her face still burning from the slap, and felt something that might have been terror or liberation or both at once. She'd just burned her life down, cut the only safety net she'd ever known. For what? For pride. For some insane hope that she could actually survive on her own? Her knees gave out and she sat down hard on the stone floor, wrapping her arms around herself. What had she done? The workshop was silent except for the bubble of heating dye water and her own ragged breathing. She should cry, should panic, should run after her mother and apologize and beg forgiveness. Instead, she just sat there, feeling strangely empty, free-falling, waiting to hit the ground. She didn't know how long she'd been sitting there when she heard the second knock. This one different, quieter, more hesitant. Alara, Cale's voice came through the door. I know you said you didn't want to see me, but I was at the market and you weren't there, and He stopped. Alara didn't move, didn't answer, couldn't. I'm going to assume your silence means either you're not home or you really don't want me here, Cale continued. But just in case it's neither of those things, just in case you're in there and something's wrong, I need you to give me some kind of sign. Anything, even if it's just telling me to fuck off. She should tell him to leave, should stay quiet and let him walk away. Instead, she heard herself say, "The door's open." Silence. Then, "Can I come in?" "I don't care." The door opened slowly. Cale stepped inside and stopped. His eyes went immediately to the red mark on her face, then to her position on the floor, then to her expression, blank, empty, like someone had carved out everything vital and left just the shell. "Who hit you?" His voice was so quiet, so controlled. Alara laughed. It came out wrong, cracked and bitter. "Does it matter?" "Yes." "Why?" "You going to defend my honor?" She was spiraling now, could feel it happening, but couldn't stop. "Fight for me? That's very noble, very heroic, except I don't need a hero. I don't need anyone." Cale moved closer slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. "I'm not trying to be your hero." "Then what are you trying to be?" "Present." He crouched down so they were at eye level, careful to keep distance between them. "Just present. If you want me to leave, I will. But if you need someone to sit here with you While I what? Fall apart? Alara was shaking now, everything she'd been holding back starting to crack through. I'm fine. I'm always fine. I'm so practiced at fine I could teach classes. Alara, she's right, you know. The words were tumbling out now, unstoppable. My mother, everything she said, I am too much work, I am damaged, I do freeze up and get strange and make people uncomfortable. And you... She looked at him directly, her gray eyes bright with unshed tears. You're going to figure that out, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe a month from now. But eventually you'll see it, see what everyone else sees, and then you'll leave too. What if I don't? You will. What if I don't? He repeated, voice steady, certain. What if all those things you think are wrong with you are actually just you? And what if there's nothing wrong with that? You don't understand. Then help me understand. Alara stared at him, at this stranger who claimed to be a ruler, who talked about magic bonds and compatible pairs, who'd come back even after she'd told him to leave, who was looking at her like she mattered, and something in her, something that had been locked down tight for so long she'd forgotten it existed, started to crack. I can't, she started, then stopped. Tried again. I don't know how to... She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't find words for the tangle of fear and hope and desperate loneliness that was choking her. So she did the only thing she could think of. She reached out. Her hand shook as it moved through the space between them, trembling so badly she almost pulled back. But then Kale's fingers closed around hers, and the world exploded into color, gold and green, just like before, but stronger now, brighter. The colors raced up both their arms, swirling and mixing, alive and impossible and completely undeniable. But there was something else this time, a third color blooming where the gold and green met, deep, luminous violet. Like nothing Alara had ever created, like nothing that should exist. She stared at it, transfixed, as it pulsed with something that felt like recognition, like welcome home. What? She started, but her voice wouldn't work. Kale was staring too, his expression unreadable. I don't know, he said quietly. That's new. The colors faded slowly, reluctantly, leaving just the warmth of skin on skin and the rapid beating of both their hearts. They stayed like that, hands clasped, breathing hard, the air between them charged with something neither could name. Finally, Alara found her voice. I burned my life down today. I know. My mother's not coming back. Good. I'm probably going to lose everything. Not everything. She looked at him, really looked, at the way he was watching her, steady, patient, like he had all the time in the world. Why are you here? Because you're here. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, and she felt the ghost of color pulse in response. I don't know what this is, Alara. I don't know why it happened or what it means, but I know I can't walk away. Even though Don't. His voice went hard. Don't finish that sentence. Don't tell me what everyone else thinks you are. Tell me what you think you are. Alara opened her mouth, closed it. She honestly didn't know. I think, she started slowly, I think I'm tired. I think I'm scared. I think I just destroyed the only security I had for absolutely no reason except pride. That's not nothing, isn't it? No. Kale's voice was fierce now, certain. Pride isn't nothing. Self-respect isn't nothing. Standing up for yourself even when it costs you everything. That's the opposite of nothing. Alara felt tears start to fall, finally, after holding them back all day. I don't know what to do now. You don't have to know. Not yet. But, Alara, he waited until she looked at him. You just survived an earthquake. You're allowed to sit in the rubble for a minute before you start rebuilding. She laughed through her tears, a wet, messy sound. Is that what this is? An earthquake? Felt like one to me. They sat there on the workshop floor as the light from the high windows shifted from morning to afternoon. Neither of them moved to let go of the other's hand. Eventually, Alara's tears slowed, stopped. I should get back to work, she said, but didn't move. What are you working on? Lord Harwick's commission, blue and crimson table runners, due in 3 days. Show me. She blinked. What? Show me how you do it. The triple soak method. I want to understand. Why? Because it's yours. He said it like it was obvious, like wanting to understand her craft was the most natural thing in the world. Because I meant what I said yesterday. Your work is extraordinary. Alara studied his face, looking for the lie, the mockery, the trap. She didn't find any. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. She stood on shaky legs and Cale rose with her. And for the rest of that afternoon, in a workshop that smelled of dye and steam and new beginnings, Alara Vance taught a ruler how to turn water into color, and tried not to notice the way their hands kept finding excuses to touch, the way the violet bloomed between them like a promise, like something inevitable, like the beginning of a story that was going to destroy them both, or save them. Time would tell which. But as the sun set over Harrowmere and the canal water turned to molten copper, as Cale stood beside her and watched her work with an expression she couldn't quite name, Alara let herself hope. Just a little. Just enough to be dangerous. And somewhere in the Eastern Territories, ancient instincts stirred, recognizing, claiming, beginning to pull threads that would either weave them together or tear the world apart trying. The water in the dye vat bubbled, the colors swirled, and neither of them noticed the shadow watching from the bridge outside, or the way it disappeared when they finally looked at each other and smiled. The shadow on the bridge belonged to Marcus Thorne, and he'd been watching long enough to understand exactly what he was seeing. He was Cale's senior advisor, had been for 6 years now, and he knew the signs. The way Cale's body angled toward the woman even when he was standing still. The careful distance he was maintaining that somehow felt more intimate than touching. The fact that he was still in this God's-forsaken canal town 3 days past when he should have left. Marcus had seen Cale negotiate with warlords, face down assassins, execute traitors without blinking. He'd never seen him look at anyone the way he was looking at that dyer through the workshop window, like she was the only real thing in the world, which meant this was about to become Marcus's problem. He waited until full dark before approaching the inn where Cale was staying. Found him in his room, still wearing work clothes that smelled like dye and steam. "Tell me you didn't," Marcus said without preamble. Cale looked up from the reports he'd been ignoring. "Didn't what?" "Don't play stupid. It doesn't suit you." Marcus closed the door. "The bond. It happened." Not a question. Cale's silence was answer enough. "Fuck." Marcus sat down hard. "Fuck. Do you understand what this means?" "I understand." "Do you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, you've just tied yourself to a nobody in a nothing town with no family, no connections, no, Careful." Cale's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Very careful how you finish that sentence." Marcus stopped, studied his friend's face. Worse than he thought. "You're already defending her. I'm establishing boundaries." Cale set down the reports he hadn't been reading. "Alara is not open for discussion. Not her worth, not her value, not her suitability. Are we clear?" "Crystal." Marcus leaned back. "Now tell me how you're planning to handle this politically." "I'm not." "You're what?" "I'm not handling it politically." Cale's voice was flat, final. "This isn't a negotiation. It's not a treaty. It's not something I'm going to manage or spin or use for advantage. Cale, you're the ruler of the Eastern Territories. Everything you do is political." "Not this." Marcus stared at him. "You're serious?" "Completely. And what happens when the noble houses find out you've bonded with a common dyer? When they start asking why you're spending time in Harrowmere instead of the capital? When they realize you're making decisions based on what?" Cale's eyes went hard. "Say it." "Based on a woman you've known for 3 days. 4. That doesn't make it better." Kyle stood, moved to the window. Outside, Harrowmere slept under a thin moon. Somewhere out there, Alara was probably still working. She worked late most nights. He'd learned that. Worked until her hands were too tired to hold the fabric anymore. Worked because it was the only thing she trusted. "I'm staying," he said quietly. "For how long?" "I don't know yet." "Cale, I know what you're going to say. He turned from the window. I know what I'm risking. I know this complicates everything, but I also know I'm not walking away from her. Even if it costs you the territories? The question hung between them like a blade. Cale met Marcus's eyes directly. Ask me again in a month. Which wasn't an answer. Which was an answer. Marcus stood slowly. The noble houses won't wait a month. They'll want explanations, assurances. They'll want to know why their ruler has suddenly developed an interest in textile production. Then tell them the truth. Which truth would that be? That I found something worth staying for. Cale's voice was steady, certain. And that I'm not asking permission. Marcus looked at his friend, his king, and saw someone who'd already made a choice, who'd already fallen. You're going to break her, he said quietly. You know that, right? Eventually, this life, your life, it's going to destroy her. Maybe. That doesn't bother you? It terrifies me. Cale's jaw tightened. But leaving her terrifies me more. Marcus shook his head. You're making a mistake. Probably. And you're doing it anyway. Yes. There wasn't anything else to say. Marcus left, and Cale stood alone in a room that cost more per night than Alara probably made in a week, and wondered if Marcus was right. If he was going to destroy her just by being near her. If the kindest thing would be to leave now before she got used to having him around, before he got any more tangled in her gravity. He was still thinking about it an hour later when someone knocked on his door. Not Marcus's knock. Softer, uncertain. Cale opened the door. Alara stood in the hallway, wrapped in a shawl that had seen better days. Her hair was coming loose from its braid, and there were fresh dye stains on her fingers. She looked exhausted. She looked beautiful. I shouldn't be here, she said immediately. Okay. I was working, and I kept thinking about what you said, about the bond. And She stopped, started again. Can I come in? Cale stepped back without a word. She entered slowly, looking around the room like she was cataloging everything. The expensive furniture, the untouched wine, the reports scattered across the desk. You really are a ruler, she said quietly. I told you I was. I know, I just didn't. She hugged herself tighter. It's different seeing it. Cale closed the door but didn't move toward her, gave her space. What are you doing here, Alara? I don't know. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I couldn't sleep, and I kept thinking about earlier, about the colors, about what you said this was. The marking bond. Is it real? She turned to face him. I need you to tell me the truth, not some story, not what you think I want to hear. Is it actually real? Cale could have lied, could have given her an easy out. Yes. She flinched like he'd struck her. So it's what? We're supposed to be together? Whether we want to or not? No. He kept his voice level. The bond recognizes compatibility. It doesn't force anything. You still choose. But you feel it. Not a question. Yes. And it's... She stopped, swallowed. How strong is it? Cale considered lying again, decided against it. Strong enough that walking away from you feels like dying. The words fell between them like stones. Alara's breath hitched. That's not fair. I know. You can't say things like that to me. Why not? Because... Her voice rose, panic bleeding through. Because I don't know what to do with that. With you, with any of this. You don't have to do anything. Yes, I do. She was pacing now, agitated. You're here, and you're saying these things, and every time you touch me, the world turns into color, and She stopped, pressed her hands to her face. I can't trust this, she said quietly. I can't trust you. I know. Stop saying that. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me this is temporary. She dropped her hands, and her eyes were bright with tears. I want you to tell me you're going to get bored or realize I'm not worth it or anything that makes sense. Because this doesn't make sense. Cale moved then, slowly, carefully. He stopped a foot away from her. Look at me. She did. This terrifies me too, he said quietly. I didn't plan this. Didn't want it. I came to Harrowmere for trade negotiations, and I was supposed to leave days ago. But then I saw you, and something in me recognized something in you, and now I can't. He stopped, breathed. I don't know how to explain it, but walking away isn't an option anymore. It has to be, her voice broke. You can't upend my entire life and expect me to. I'm not expecting anything. Yes, you are. You're expecting me to believe this is real. You're expecting me to trust you. You're expecting me to what? To want this. The words came out like a confession. To want you. Even though I know better. Even though every instinct I have is screaming that this is a trap. Cale's chest tightened. Is that what you think this is? A trap? I don't know what this is. Alara wrapped her arms around herself again. All I know is that 4 days ago I had a life. It wasn't a great life, but it was mine. And now you're here and everything is falling apart and I don't know how to. She couldn't finish. Cale reached out slowly, gave her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers brushed her cheek and the color bloomed immediately. Gold, green, violet, swirling like living paint. Alara's eyes went wide. Every time? Seems like it. Why? I don't know. His thumb traced the line of her jaw, and the colors followed like they were mapping her. But I'm not complaining. You should be. Her voice was barely a whisper. It's too much, too fast. You don't even know me. Then let me. Why? Because I want to. He let his hand drop, but didn't step back. Because when I watch you work, you're the most focused person I've ever seen. Because you survived 23 years of systematic cruelty and came out the other side still making beautiful things. Because... Stop. Alara closed her eyes. Please stop. Why? Because if you keep talking like that, I'm going to start believing you. Would that be so terrible? She opened her eyes. They were wet. Yes. Why? Because when you leave, and you will leave, it's going to hurt so much worse. There it was. The fear underneath all the resistance. Cale understood then, really understood. This wasn't about the bond being too much. It was about it not being enough. About her being convinced that nothing, not magic, not compatibility, not anything, would be strong enough to make someone stay. I'm not leaving, he said quietly. You say that now. I mean it. Everyone means it. Her voice was bitter, tired. Until they don't. Alara, see, my father meant it. The words came out flat, dead. He used to tell me I was his whole world, that nothing would ever make him leave. Then he got sick and he was gone in 3 weeks and I was 7 years old and suddenly my whole world was my mother. Cale went very still. And my mother, she used to be different. Before, she used to smile sometimes, used to tell me stories. Alara's voice was distant now, like she was watching this from somewhere far away. But then it was just the two of us and all that money and all those expectations, and I wasn't what she needed me to be. Alara, I tried. She looked at him, and the pain in her eyes was so raw it hurt to witness. I tried so hard to be what she wanted, to be quieter, smaller, less difficult. But it was never enough. I was never enough. And eventually she stopped pretending to love me and started saying it out loud. She's wrong. Is she? Alara laughed, and it sounded like breaking glass. Because from where I'm standing, she might be right. Maybe I am too much work. Maybe I'm damaged beyond repair. Maybe... Cale kissed her, not gently, not carefully. He kissed her like he was trying to prove something, like he could transfer certainty through touch. The bond erupted. Colors exploded between them, gold and green and violet so bright it lit up the dark room like fireworks. It raced across their skin, alive and fierce, and absolutely undeniable. Alara gasped against his mouth, and Cale felt the exact moment her resistance cracked. She kissed him back, hard, desperate, like she was drowning and he was air. Her hands fisted in his shirt and the colors intensified, swirling faster, painting them both in impossible light. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. That's not fair, Alara whispered. I know. You can't just kiss me every time I... Can't I? No. but she didn't let go of his shirt. You're not playing fair. I never said I would. Kale, tell me you didn't feel that. His voice was rough. Tell me that was one-sided. She couldn't. It doesn't matter what I felt. It's the only thing that matters. No. She finally let go, stepped back. The colors faded reluctantly. What matters is reality, and the reality is you're a ruler and I'm a dyer, and this, whatever this is, it doesn't fit into either of our worlds. Then we make a new world? That's not how it works. Why not? Because she was shaking now. Because people like you don't end up with people like me. Because this kind of thing doesn't happen in real life. Because you're terrified. The words hit like a slap. Alara's face went pale. Excuse me? You're terrified, Kale repeated, softer this time. Not of me. Not of the bond. You're terrified of wanting this, of wanting me, because if you admit you want it, then losing it will hurt. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? He moved closer. You've spent your whole life learning not to want things, not to hope for things, because hoping meant you could be disappointed. Wanting meant you could be denied. So you made yourself small and quiet and careful, and you convinced yourself that was safety. Stop. But it's not safety, Alara. It's a cage. And you've been locked inside it so long you've forgotten what it feels like to reach for something. I said stop! Why? His voice was gentle but relentless. Because I'm wrong or because I'm right? Alara's hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. You don't understand, she said finally. You don't understand what it's like to want something so badly it physically hurts. To know that if you let yourself have it, even for a second, losing it will destroy you. Then don't lose it. I don't get that choice. The words ripped out of her. You do. You get to choose whether you stay or go. Whether you keep wanting this or wake up one day and realize I'm not worth the trouble. But me? I don't get to choose any of that. All I get to choose is whether I survive it when you leave. The room went silent. Kale stared at her, and for the first time since this started, he understood the full weight of what he was asking. She wasn't just afraid he'd leave. She was certain he would, and she was already grieving it. I'm not going to leave, he said quietly. You keep saying that. Because it's true. How can you know? Her voice broke. How can you possibly know that you won't wake up next month or next year and realize this was a mistake? Because I've lived 31 years without you and I was fine, functional, successful. He took a breath. And then I saw you, and fine stopped being enough. Alara closed her eyes. That's a pretty line. It's the truth. Truth changes. Not this truth. You can't know that. Yes, I can. He moved closer, and this time she didn't back away. Because I know myself. I know what I want, and I know that what I want is you. You don't even know me, so let me know you. He caught her hand, and the colors bloomed soft between them. Stay. Talk to me. Tell me everything you're afraid of so I can prove you wrong. And if you can't, then at least we tried. She looked at their joined hands, at the violet light pulsing between their fingers like a heartbeat. This is insane, she whispered. Probably. We're going to crash and burn. Maybe. You're really not going to make this easy, are you? Would you believe me if I did? She laughed. It came out wet, broken. No. Then I guess I'll have to do it the hard way. Alara looked up at him, and something in her expression shifted, softened. 3 chances, she said quietly. What? You get 3 chances to prove this is real. 3 times to show me you're not going to disappear. Her voice was shaking but determined. After that, if you're still here, I'll try. I'll actually try to believe this. Kale's chest tightened. Okay. I'm serious. So am I. First chance starts now. She pulled her hand free, and immediately the loss of contact felt wrong. I need you to leave Harrowmere. He went very still. What? Go back to your territories, handle your business. Be the ruler you're supposed to be. Her voice was steady now, final. And if you come back, if you actually come back, That's chance one. Alara, I mean it, Kale. If this is real, it'll survive distance. If it's not, she stopped, swallowed. If it's not, better we both figure that out now. Every instinct in him screamed against it. The bond was howling, demanding he stay, that leaving her was impossible, that distance would kill them both. But underneath the noise, he understood what she was really asking. Prove it's a choice, not compulsion. Prove you can walk away and choose to come back. How long? He asked quietly. 2 weeks. Might as well be 2 years. Okay. Her eyes widened. You're agreeing. You asked for 3 chances. This is the first one. He moved closer, caught her face in his hands. The colors exploded again, gold, green, violet. But understand this. I'm coming back. Not because of the bond, not because of magic or instinct or any of it. I'm coming back because I choose to, because you're worth it, because... He kissed her, hard and desperate and absolutely certain. When he pulled back, they were both shaking. 2 weeks, he said. 2 weeks, she echoed. And Alara? He let his hands drop but held her gaze. When I come back, not if, I expect you to actually give this a chance. No more hiding, no more assuming the worst. You asked me to prove it's real. I need you to be brave enough to believe me when I do. She nodded, couldn't speak. Kale stepped back. It felt like tearing something vital. I'll see you in 2 weeks. He left before either of them could change their minds. The door closed, and Alara stood alone in an expensive room that still smelled like him, wrapped in colors that were slowly fading from her skin, and wondered what the hell she'd just done. The next morning, Kale was gone. Alara knew because she went to his inn, hating herself for checking, unable to stop, and the innkeeper told her he'd left before dawn. Paid through the month, though, the woman said cheerfully. So I guess he's planning to come back. Alara didn't answer. She went back to her workshop and tried to work. The dye wouldn't take right. The colors came out wrong, too pale, too weak, nothing like her usual precision. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She told herself it was fine. This was fine. She'd asked him to leave, needed him to leave, needed to know if he'd actually come back. But knowing it was necessary didn't make it hurt less. 3 days passed, then 4. Alara worked late every night, pushing herself until exhaustion made thought impossible. During the day, she kept her head down at the market, avoiding eye contact, avoiding conversation, avoiding the whispers. Because people had noticed. Of course they had. Noticed the stranger who'd been asking about her. Noticed him spending time at her workshop. Noticed his expensive clothes and the way merchants deferred to him. Noticed that he was gone now. I told you, her mother's voice said from behind her stall on day 5. Men like that don't stay. Alara didn't turn around. Go away, Mother. I'm trying to help you. No, you're not. Alara's voice was flat, tired. You're trying to prove you were right. There's a difference. I was right. Viren moved closer. He used you and left, just like I said he would. He didn't use me. Then where is he? Alara's hands stilled in the dye water. He had business. In the Eastern Territories. And you believed him? Yes. Viren laughed. You really are that naive. He probably has a wife, children, a whole life you know nothing about. He's coming back. Keep telling yourself that. Alara turned then, looked her mother in the eye. You know what's sad? You genuinely can't imagine someone choosing to come back to me. It's not even cruelty at this point. You actually believe I'm that worthless. Viren's expression flickered. I'm trying to protect you from disappointment. No. You're trying to make me as small and afraid as you are. Alara's voice was quiet, certain. But I'm not you. And I'm done pretending your poison is medicine. She turned back to her work, and this time Viren didn't follow. 6 days, 7. The whispers got louder. Poor thing, actually thought he was interested. Viren warned her. Some people never learn. Alara kept working, kept her head down, kept breathing. 8 days, 9. She woke up on day 10 and realized she'd stopped expecting him to come back. Not consciously, but somewhere deep down, the hope had started to die. Because of course it had. Because hope was dangerous and trust was foolish, and she'd been right all along. She was in her workshop, hands deep in blue dye, when she felt it. A pulse, warmth spreading through her chest like sunrise. The bond. She froze. It was faint, distant, like an echo, but unmistakable, like something sleeping had just woken up, or like something far away was getting closer. Her heart started pounding. He was... No. She couldn't let herself believe it, couldn't let herself hope, but the warmth kept building and her hands started shaking so badly she had to pull them from the dye water. The door burst open. Alara spun around. Kale stood in the doorway, travel-stained and exhausted and absolutely real. 10 days, he said. His voice was rough. I couldn't make it the full 2 weeks. I tried, but... Alara was already moving. She crossed the workshop in 3 strides and threw herself at him. He caught her. The bond exploded. Gold and green and violet, so bright it lit up the entire workshop like lightning. It raced across both of them, wild and joyous and absolutely certain. You came back, Alara gasped against his chest. You actually came back. I told you I would. I didn't. I couldn't. She couldn't finish. Kale's arms tightened around her. First chance. Passed. 2 more to go. She pulled back just enough to see his face. You're serious. Completely. Even though I'm... Don't. His voice was fierce. Don't finish that sentence. You're not broken. You're not too much. You're exactly right. Alara stared at him. At this man who'd left when she asked him to and come back before she'd even dared hope. And for the first time in her life, she let herself believe. Just a little. Just enough. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Second chance. She was crying now, couldn't stop. You get a second chance. Kale smiled. It transformed his entire face. Good. Because I've got plans. Plans? For proving this is real. He brushed tears from her cheeks, and the violet bloomed under his touch like flowers. For showing you exactly how serious I am. Kale, I'm relocating, he said simply. Alara's breath caught. What? Not permanently, not yet, but I'm setting up operations here, in Harrowmere, close enough that you can't convince yourself I'm disappearing. You can't do that. Already done. But your territories, still mine, still running, but my advisors can handle the day-to-day. His expression was absolutely certain. I'm staying here, with you, until you believe this is real. Alara opened her mouth, closed it. That's insane, she finally managed. Probably. People are going to talk. Let them. Your advisors are going to hate me. Don't care. Kale. He kissed her, soft this time, sweet. When he pulled back, his eyes were serious. I know what I'm risking. I know what I'm asking you to risk, but I also know that you're worth it, worth all of it. His thumb traced her jaw, leaving trails of violet light. So here's chance 2. Let me prove it. Let me stay. Let me show you what this could be if you just... The workshop door slammed open. They both turned. Marcus stood in the doorway, face pale. We have a problem, he said. Kale's expression went hard. I told you. The noble houses know. Marcus's voice was tight. About her. About the bond. About all of it. How? Does it matter? Marcus stepped inside and Alara could see the tension radiating off him. They're calling an emergency session. They want you back. Now. No. Kale, I said no. They're threatening to vote you out of power. The words fell like stones. Alara felt Kale go rigid against her. They can't do that. They can, and they will, unless you come back and explain why you've abandoned your responsibilities for... Marcus stopped, looked at Alara. Something in his expression shifted. For her. The silence was crushing. How long do I have? Kale asked quietly. 3 days, maybe less. Then they'll have to wait. Kale, this is your territory we're talking about. Your position, everything you've built. Marcus moved closer. You can't throw all that away for... Careful. Kale's voice dropped to something deadly. Very careful how you finish that sentence. Marcus stopped. Drew a breath. I'm trying to help you. Then give me options, not ultimatums. There are no options. You come back and fix this, or you lose everything. Not everything. Marcus looked between them. Understanding dawned. You're actually choosing her. I'm choosing both. Kale's arm tightened around Alara's waist. I'm choosing my territory, and I'm choosing her. And if the noble houses can't accept that, they'll destroy her. Marcus's voice was quiet, certain. You understand that, right? If you try to force this, they'll turn their attention on her, dig into her past, her mother. They'll find every weakness and exploit it until there's nothing left. Alara felt ice flood her veins. Kale, she started. No. His voice was absolute. They don't get to threaten you. They're not threatening. Marcus's expression was almost sympathetic. They're warning. There's a difference. Not to me. Then you're going to have to make a choice. Marcus looked at Alara. And so is she. The weight of his gaze made her want to disappear. What do you mean? I mean that if Kale stays here, he loses his position. And if he takes you back with him, you become the target of every ambitious noble looking to weaken him. Marcus's voice was matter-of-fact, clinical. Either way, someone loses. So the question is, which of you loves the other enough to walk away? The words hung in the air like poison. Alara felt Kale tense beside her. Get out, he said quietly. Kale, I said get out, now. Marcus left. The door closed. And Alara stood in the sudden silence, her mind racing. She'd asked for 3 chances, but she hadn't considered what it would cost him to give them. Kale, she said carefully, what he said doesn't matter. It does matter. She pulled away from him, needed to see his face. If staying here costs you everything, it doesn't. He just said, I heard what he said. Kale's jaw was tight, and I'm telling you it doesn't change anything. How can you say that? Because I've already made my choice. His voice rose. I chose you. The second I felt the bond, the second I saw you, I chose you. And I'm not changing my mind because some power-hungry nobles think they can manipulate me. But if you lose your position, then I lose it. You don't mean that. Yes, I do. He caught her face in his hands. Alara, listen to me. I have spent 9 years building power. 9 years managing territories and balancing politics and making decisions that affect thousands of lives. And not once, not ever, have I felt what I feel when I look at you. That's the bond talking. No, his voice was fierce. That's me talking. The bond might have brought us together, but this, he gestured between them. This is choice, my choice, and I choose you. Alara's eyes were burning. Even if it destroys you? Even then. Kale, that's not, you can't. Why not? His thumbs brushed her cheeks. Why can't I choose something for myself? Why can't I decide that you're more important than power? Because people depend on you. And what about what I depend on? His voice cracked. What about what I need? The question hung between them. Alara stared at him, at this ruler who had just admitted he needed her, who was willing to lose everything to keep her. And she understood, finally, what he was really offering, not just his presence, his whole life. I can't let you do this, she whispered. It's not your choice. Yes, it is. She pulled away from him. If I tell you to go, if I end this right now, you'll keep your position, your power, everything, and lose you. I'm not worth it. Stop saying that. His voice rang through the workshop. Stop deciding what you're worth based on what other people told you. You are worth it. You are worth every risk, every sacrifice, every goddamn consequence. How can you know that? Because for the first time in my life, I'm not thinking about consequences. He was breathing hard. I'm not calculating risks or managing optics or planning 10 moves ahead. I'm just feeling. And what I feel is that I would rather lose my territories than lose you. The words hit like a blow. Alara couldn't breathe. Thought, don't say things like that. Why not? Because, her voice broke. Because I'm going to start believing them. And then when you realize you made a mistake, I'm not going to realize that. You don't know that. Yes, I do. They stood there, both breathing hard, the bond pulsing between them like a live wire. Finally, Alara spoke. Go back. Kale went very still. What? Go back to your territories. Fix this. Her voice was shaking but determined. Save your position. Elara? That's chance 2. She forced herself to look at him. You go back. You prove that you can be the ruler they need. And if you still want me after, then you come back and we figure it out. And if they force me to choose, then you choose your territories. No. Kale, no. His voice was absolute. I'm not choosing between you and my position because it's not a choice. I want both, and I'm going to find a way to have both. That's not realistic. I don't care. He moved closer. I spent 9 years being realistic, being practical, making smart choices. And you know what? I was miserable. Functional, successful, and completely empty. And then I found you. And suddenly everything that mattered before just doesn't. That's going to change. It's not. How can you be so sure? Because I know myself. His hands caught hers and the violet bloomed between them. I know what I want, what I need, and I know that losing you would destroy me in ways losing my position never could. Elara's throat was tight. You're being honest, he cut her off. I'm being honest, finally, about what I want, who I want, and what I'm willing to risk to keep it. Even if it costs you everything? Yes. The single word fell between them like a vow. Elara stared at him, at this man who was offering her everything she'd ever wanted and everything she'd learned not to hope for. And she made a decision. Okay? Okay? Go back, fix this. Do whatever you need to do to keep your position. Her voice was steady now. But if they make you choose, if it really comes down to me or your territories, I choose you. No. She squeezed his hands. You choose what's right. And if that means walking away from this, from me, then that's what you do. Elara, promise me. She held his gaze. Promise me you won't throw away everything you built just because of what we feel right now. Kale's jaw tightened. I can't promise that. Then we're done. The words came out harder than she intended. Kale recoiled like she'd struck him. You don't mean that. I do. She pulled her hands free and the loss of contact felt like dying. I won't be the reason you destroy your life. I won't be that person. You're not. Yes, I am. Her voice rose. If you give up your territories for me, if you lose everything because you're too stubborn to make a rational choice, then I become the woman who ruined you, and I won't. She couldn't finish. Kale stared at her. So what are you saying? That you want me to choose them over you? I'm saying I want you to choose wisely. Her voice was shaking. I'm saying that 3 days ago you told me you'd do anything to prove this was real. Well, here's your chance. Prove it's real by proving you can think straight, by proving you're more than just what? Just some lovesick fool willing to throw away everything for a woman he barely knows. The words fell like blows. Kale went very, very still. Is that what you think I am? Elara couldn't look at him. I think you're letting the bond make decisions for you. And I think if you don't step back and think clearly, you're going to regret it. The only thing I'll regret is listening to this. Kale? No. His voice was cold now, hard. You want me to prove I can think clearly? Fine. Here's clear thinking. I go back, I handle the noble houses, and I do it my way. Not theirs, not yours. Mine. And if they force you to, then I'll deal with it. He moved to the door. But I'm not making promises about choosing my position over you, because that's not a choice I'm willing to make. Even if I'm asking you to? He stopped, turned. Especially if you're asking me to. And then he was gone. The door slammed behind him, and Elara stood alone in her workshop, wrapped in the ghost of violet light, and wondered if she'd just saved him, or destroyed them both. Outside, storm clouds were gathering. Inside, the dye water had gone cold, and somewhere in the space between what was and what could be, the bond pulsed, wounded, furious, and absolutely refusing to. The bond wouldn't stop screaming. That's what Kale realized 3 hours into the ride back to the Eastern Territories. It wasn't pain exactly, more like a constant pressure in his chest, a pulling sensation that got worse with every mile he put between himself and Harrowmere, between himself and her. Marcus rode beside him in silence. Smart man. He'd learned when to push and when to shut up. This was definitely a shut-up moment. Cale's hands were white-knuckled on the reins, his jaw so tight it ached. He kept replaying the conversation, her voice saying she wouldn't be the reason he destroyed his life, like she was giving him permission to walk away, like she expected him to. The fury that burned through him at that thought was almost enough to drown out the Bond's protests. Almost. "You're thinking too loud," Marcus said finally. "Shut up. We need to talk strategy. The noble houses aren't going to—" "I said shut up!" Marcus went quiet again. They rode through the night and reached the capital by dawn. The Eastern Territory sprawled before them, gray stone buildings climbing hillsides, the castle perched at the summit like a crown. Cale's home for 9 years. It looked like a cage. The emergency session was scheduled for noon. That gave him 5 hours to prepare, 5 hours to figure out how to keep both his position and Alara, 5 hours to prove Marcus and the noble houses and Alara herself wrong about what he was capable of. He spent the first hour bathing and changing into formal clothes, the kind that announced power before he even opened his mouth. Black and deep green, expensive fabric that Alara would probably know the thread count of just by looking. The thought made his chest ache. He spent the second hour reviewing reports, catching up on what he'd missed during his time in Harrowmere. Trade disputes, border tensions, a minor uprising in the northern provinces that had been handled without his input. Everything was fine. Everything was running smoothly without him. Which meant the emergency session wasn't about necessity. It was about control. By the third hour, Cale was pacing his study, the Bond still pulling at him like a fishhook in his sternum, when Marcus knocked and entered without waiting for permission. "They're gathering early," he said. "Word is they're planning an ambush." "Of course they are." "Cale, you need to understand what you're walking into. This isn't a debate. It's a power play. They're going to force you to choose. Then I'll choose. And if you choose wrong—" "There is no wrong choice." Cale stopped pacing, turned to face his advisor. "Either I keep my position and lose my mind, or I keep my sanity and lose my position. Both outcomes are survivable." Marcus stared at him. "You're serious. As death. You'd really give all this up for a woman you've known for 2 weeks?" "Stop calling her a woman." Cale's voice went cold. "She has a name. Use it." "Fine. You'd give all this up for Alara? A dyer from a backwater canal town with no connections, no power, no—" Cale's hand was around Marcus's throat before either of them registered the movement. He slammed his advisor against the wall, not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough to make a point. "I told you to be careful," Cale said quietly. "I told you she was off limits. Did you think I was joking?" Marcus's eyes were wide, but to his credit, he didn't struggle. "No." "Then stop testing me." Cale released him, stepped back. "I understand you're trying to help. I understand you think I'm making a mistake. But you need to understand something too. I don't care. I don't care if she's common or connected or powerful. I don't care if the noble houses approve. I don't care about any of it." "Then what do you care about?" The question hung between them. Cale thought about Alara's hands in dye water, the way she smoothed fabric like she was calming something wild. The look in her eyes when she'd told him to choose his territories over her, like she didn't believe she was worth choosing. "I care about proving her wrong," he said finally. Marcus rubbed his throat. "About what?" "About everything." Chamg. The council chamber was packed. Cale counted 15 of the 20 noble houses represented, more than enough for a quorum. They sat in their designated seats around the circular table, faces carefully neutral, hands folded, waiting. He took his seat at the head of the table and let the silence stretch. Finally, Lord Heron, eldest of the nobles, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, spoke. "You've been absent." "I've been conducting business in Harrowmere." "For 2 weeks?" "Yes." "What business could possibly require 2 weeks in a canal town?" Cale smiled. It wasn't friendly. "The kind that's none of yours." Murmurs rippled around the table. Lord Heron's expression didn't change. "Everything you do is our business. You rule by our consent. I rule by right of conquest and 9 years of successful leadership. Your consent is appreciated, but not required." The murmurs got louder. Lady Thorne, young, ambitious, dangerous, leaned forward. We've heard interesting rumors about you and a local woman. Have you? Care to confirm or deny? No. No? Her eyebrows rose. Just no? My personal life is personal. If you called this session to discuss my relationships, you've wasted everyone's time. We called this session, Lord Heron said quietly, because you've been making decisions that affect all of us without consultation. Staying in Harrowmere, relocating resources, reassigning personnel. Temporary measures. Everything's documented. That's not the point. Then what is the point? Cale kept his voice level, bored even. Say what you mean, Heron. We're all tired. The old lord studied him for a long moment. We want to know if you're still fit to rule. The words fell like stones. The chamber went silent. Cale didn't react, didn't move, just met Heron's gaze directly. And what makes you think I'm not? You've been distracted, erratic, making choices based on personal interest rather than territorial need. Such as? Such as spending 2 weeks in a backwater town instead of handling the northern uprising, which was handled by your subordinates. That's what subordinates are for, not when the ruler should be leading. Cale's jaw tightened. The uprising was minor. It didn't require my direct intervention. That's not your decision to make alone. Actually, it is. Cale leaned forward. I am the ruler. I make the decisions. You advise. That's how this works. And when your decisions endanger the territories, show me how my being in Harrowmere endangered anything. Lord Heron pulled out a document, slid it across the table. Cale picked it up, scanned it. His blood went cold. It was a trade agreement, one he'd negotiated 3 months ago with the southern provinces. Standard terms, favorable rates, nothing unusual, except for the addendum dated 5 days ago. The southern provinces were threatening to pull out unless Cale returned immediately to renegotiate. They claimed his absence indicated instability in leadership, claimed they couldn't trust agreements made by a ruler who abandoned his post for personal reasons. This is bullshit, Cale said quietly. Is it? Lady Thorne's voice was silk over steel. Or is it a natural consequence of your actions? This is manipulation. Someone got to the southern provinces, convinced them to apply pressure. Paranoid much? Cale looked around the table, saw the carefully blank faces, the studied neutrality. One of them had done this. One of them had sabotaged his agreements to force him back. Who? He asked softly. No one answered. I asked a question. His voice dropped to something dangerous. Who went behind my back to the southern provinces? Silence. Then Lord Heron spoke. Does it matter? The damage is done. Either you return to full-time leadership and repair the relationship, or the trade agreements collapse. Your choice. And if I refuse to play your games, then the territories suffer, and we vote you out. Heron's voice was calm, matter of fact. We have the authority. The majority is here. All it takes is a simple vote. Cale stared at him. At all of them. They had him cornered. They knew it. He knew it. The bond was screaming at him. Go back to her. None of this matters. But his mind was racing through options, scenarios, outcomes. If he stayed, kept his position, he could protect the territories, but he'd have to give up Alara. The noble houses would make sure of it. They'd block any attempt to bring her here, would sabotage any relationship that distracted him from his duties. If he left, chose her, the territories would suffer. Trade agreements would collapse. The northern provinces might revolt. Everything he'd built would crumble. Alara had been right. The realization hit like a fist to the gut. She'd been right to tell him to choose wisely, right to refuse to let him throw everything away for her. Because this trap laid by ambitious nobles who saw his distraction as opportunity, this was exactly what she'd feared. How long do I have? He asked quietly. To decide? Lord Heron shrugged. Now works. Now. We need an answer, Cale. Are you staying here full-time, focused on your duties, or are you choosing other priorities? The way he said it made Cale's hands clench. And if I say I can do both? We don't believe you. Try me. No. Lady Thorne's voice was flat. We're not gambling the territories on your ability to juggle. Choose. Now. Cale looked around the table again, saw the determination, the unity. They'd planned this perfectly. He could fight them, could refuse to choose, dare them to vote him out, call their bluff. But it wasn't a bluff. They would actually do it, and the territories would suffer for it. The Bond was still screaming. His chest felt like it was caving in. He thought about Alara in her workshop, hands steady in dye water, telling him to choose wisely. He thought about her face when he'd left, the resignation in her eyes, like she'd already accepted losing him, like she'd expected it. I won't be the reason you destroy your life. Fuck. Fine, he heard himself say. I'll stay. Full time. Focused. The relief around the table was palpable. And the woman? Lord Heron asked. Kael's jaw was so tight, it felt like his teeth might shatter. Irrelevant. We need to hear you say it. Say what? That you're ending the relationship, that you won't return to Harrowmere, that you're choosing your duties over your personal interests. Every word felt like a knife. Kael forced himself to speak. I'm choosing the territories. And I won't return to Harrowmere. The lie burned coming out. The Bond screamed in protest, but he said it anyway. Because Alara had been right. He couldn't protect her and rule effectively. He couldn't have both. And if he had to lose one of them, at least he could make sure the territories didn't suffer. At least he could prove he wasn't just some lovesick fool, even if it killed him. Good. Lord Heron sat back. Then let's discuss the southern provinces. The meeting continued. Kael participated, made decisions, played his role. And inside where the bond connected him to Alara, something started to die. 3 days later, Alara was in her workshop when the messenger arrived. She knew what it was before she opened it. Knew from the expensive paper, the formal seal, the messenger's careful neutrality. Official correspondence from the Eastern Territories. Her hands shook as she broke the seal. The letter was brief, professional. Due to pressing territorial concerns, I will be unable to return to Harrowmere as planned. Our agreement is hereby terminated. I wish you success in your endeavors. C. Arden. No explanation, no apology, no acknowledgement of what they'd had, just termination, like a business arrangement. Alara read it 3 times, then 4, waiting for the pain to hit. It didn't. Instead, she felt nothing. Empty. Like she'd finally run out of the capacity to be hurt. She set the letter down carefully, went back to her dye work with mechanical precision, heat the water, measure the mordants, soak. Her hands didn't shake, her eyes didn't tear. She just worked. That's how her mother found her an hour later. I heard, Viren said from the doorway. Alara didn't look up. Heard what? That your ruler sent you a letter, breaking things off. Congratulations, you were right. I usually am. Viren moved closer. I did try to warn you. You did. Men like that don't... Mother. Alara's voice was flat, dead. If you're here to gloat, just do it and leave. Viren was quiet for a moment. I'm not here to gloat. Alara finally looked up. Her mother's expression was strange. Not quite sympathetic, but not cruel either. Almost human. Then why are you here? Because I know what it's like. Viren's voice was quieter than Alara had ever heard it. To believe someone might actually choose you. To let yourself hope, and then to have it ripped away. Something in Alara's chest cracked. Don't. Your father. Don't. Alara's voice shook now. Don't you dare compare this to father. He didn't choose to die. He didn't abandon you. Didn't he? Viren's laugh was bitter. He got sick. He left me alone with a child I never wanted and money that made me a target. He broke every promise he ever made. He loved you. Love doesn't matter when you're gone. The words hung between them. Alara stared at her mother and saw, for the first time, the woman beneath the cruelty. The woman who'd been hurt so badly, she'd learned to hurt first. The woman Alara was terrified of becoming. I'm nothing like you, she whispered. No? Viren tilted her head. You're in here, hiding in your work, pretending you're fine while everything inside you is screaming. You're building walls so thick nothing will ever hurt you again. You're choosing isolation over risk. Her voice went soft. Tell me how that's different. Alara couldn't answer. The difference between us, Viren continued, is that I've had 20 years to perfect it. You're just getting started. She turned to leave. Mother, Alara heard herself say. Viren stopped. Did you ever, Alara swallowed, did you ever stop loving him, Father? For a long moment, Viren didn't answer. Then, no, that's the real curse. I still love him, every single day, and I hate him for making me love someone who left. She walked out. And Alara sat alone in her workshop, understanding for the first time what her mother had been trying to teach her all these years. Love was dangerous. Hope was foolish. And trusting someone not to leave was the fastest way to destroy yourself. The letter from Kale sat on her work table, formal and cold. She picked it up. Read it one more time. Our agreement is hereby terminated. Like they'd been negotiating a contract, like what they'd felt, the bond, the colors, the impossible certainty, had been nothing but temporary insanity. She should burn it, should forget him, should prove her mother wrong about becoming bitter and walled off. Instead, she carefully folded the letter and tucked it into her pocket. Then she went back to work. Marcus found Kale in his study 3 nights later, drunk and staring at nothing. You look like hell. Fuck off. The southern provinces accepted the new terms, crisis averted. Marcus poured himself a drink. You should be celebrating. Should I? Kale, I sent the letter. The words came out slurred. Just like you wanted. Just like the noble houses wanted. I sent the fucking letter. Marcus went very still. What letter? To Alara. Terminating our agreement. Kale laughed. It sounded like breaking glass. Very professional, very clean, no emotion, just business. Kale, what did you... She was right, you know. Kale took another drink. She said I'd regret choosing her, said I'd lose everything, and she was right. You didn't lose everything. You kept the territories. I lost her. You barely knew her. Kale's glass shattered against the wall. Marcus didn't flinch. Get out, Kale said quietly. No. I said get out. And I said no. Marcus moved closer. You want to drink yourself to death over a woman you knew for 2 weeks? Fine. But you're going to hear this first. I don't want to hear anything. Too bad. Marcus's voice was hard. You made the right choice. The territories come first. They have to. That's what leadership means. Don't lecture me about leadership. Then stop acting like a lovesick child, Marcus was yelling now. You did what needed to be done. You chose duty over desire. You proved you're still fit to rule. And what did it cost? Nothing you can't survive. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Marcus's voice softened slightly. I know because I've seen you survive worse. I've seen you make harder choices. You'll get through this. Will I? Yes. Kale stared at the broken glass on the floor. The bond. It's like something's dying. Every day it gets worse. Like part of me is being carved out. It'll fade. You don't know that. It has to. Otherwise what? Kale looked up and his eyes were hollow. Otherwise I made the wrong choice? Otherwise I destroyed the one real thing I've felt in 31 years for nothing? Marcus didn't have an answer. Kale laughed again. That same broken sound. Get out, Marcus. I'm tired. This time Marcus listened. He left Kale alone with his regrets and a bond that wouldn't stop screaming. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. Alara worked. That's all she did. Work and sleep and pretend she was fine. The whispers in the market had died down. People had moved on to newer scandals. She was old news, the dyer who'd briefly caught a ruler's attention and been discarded. Predictable. Forgettable. Exactly what she'd always been. Her work improved. That was the strange thing. Without the distraction of hope, without the constant pull of wondering if Kale would return, she could focus completely. Her colors became sharper, richer, her technique more precise. She was producing the best work of her life, and it felt like ashes. She was in the market, carefully arranging her stall, when she heard the voice. Alara Vance? She looked up. A woman stood there, tall, elegant, wearing expensive traveling clothes. Her hair was dark, her eyes sharp and assessing. Yes? My name is Lady Thorne. I'm from the Eastern Territories. She smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. I wonder if we might talk. Every instinct Alara had screamed danger. About what? About Cale Arden. Lady Thorne's smile widened. And about what really happened. Alara's blood went cold. I don't know what you mean. Don't you? Lady Thorne leaned closer. He told you he was choosing the territories, didn't he? Told you it was over? Very professional, very final. How do you... Because I was there when he wrote that letter. Lady Thorne's voice was soft, poisonous. I was there when the noble houses gave him an ultimatum. I was there when he chose power over you. I asked him to choose the territories. Did you? Lady Thorne tilted her head. Or did you give him an impossible test, hoping he'd refuse? Hoping he'd prove he loved you more than duty? I don't... And he failed, didn't he? Her voice was almost sympathetic. He chose wrong, chose his position, chose us over you. Alara couldn't breathe. Why are you telling me this? Because I thought you should know the truth. Lady Thorne straightened. Cale Arden didn't leave you because he had to. He left you because when it mattered, when he had to decide what he valued most, he chose power, just like he always does. That's not, isn't it? Lady Thorne's eyes glittered. He's in the capital right now, ruling, thriving, probably already forgotten all about the little dyer who thought she might matter. Get away from me. I'm just trying to help. I said get away, Alara's voice cracked. Lady Thorne held up her hand, still smiling. Of course. I apologize if I've upset you. I just thought you deserved to know who he really is. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Alara? The bond? It fades. Eventually. He'll forget you completely. She walked away. And Alara stood frozen at her stall, Lady Thorne's words echoing in her head. He chose power, just like he always does. He'll forget you completely. The worst part was that it made sense. Everything Lady Thorne had said aligned with what Alara already believed about herself. That she wasn't worth choosing. That of course he'd pick his territories over her. That their entire connection had been nothing but temporary insanity brought on by an ancient magic neither of them understood. She'd been a fool to hope for anything different. The colors, gold, green, violet, hadn't appeared since Cale left. The bond was silent, dead, exactly like Lady Thorne said it would be. Alara packed up her stall mechanically, went back to her workshop, tried to work. The dye wouldn't take. For the first time in weeks, her hands were shaking too badly to control the color. She gave up, sat on the floor in the dark, and finally let herself cry. Not the quiet tears she'd shed before. This was the kind of crying that came from somewhere deep and primal, the kind that left you hollow. She cried for the hope she'd let herself feel, for the belief that someone might actually choose her, for the stupid, impossible fantasy that love could be enough. She cried until she had nothing left. Then she stood up, wiped her face, and made a decision. She was done. Done hoping. Done waiting. Done pretending any of it had mattered. Lady Thorne was right. Cale had made his choice. He'd chosen power, and the bond, if it had ever been real, was gone. Time to move on. Time to become what her mother had always said she'd be. Someone who didn't need anyone. Someone who couldn't be hurt. Someone safe. She was washing her face in cold water when she heard the knock. Not her mother's knock. Not a customer. She opened the door. Cale stood there. He looked worse than she'd ever seen him. Gaunt, exhausted, like he hadn't slept in weeks. But he was there. Actually, there. Alara's voice wouldn't work. I know what you're thinking, Cale said quickly. I know you got my letter. I know you probably hate me, but I need you to listen. You said it was over. I lied. The words hung between them. Alara stared at him. What? I lied. Cale's voice was rough, desperate. The noble houses, they gave me an ultimatum. Choose them or choose you. And I told them I'd choose the territories. I wrote that letter. I sent it. Then why are you here? Because I can't do it. He stepped closer. I tried. For 3 weeks I tried to just function without you. to focus on my duties and forget what we had. But I can't. The bond won't let me. And even if it would, I don't want to. Alara's chest was tight. You made your choice. I made the wrong choice. His hands reached for her, stopped. I chose fear over truth. I chose what was expected over what I wanted. I chose yourself. Alara's voice was flat. You chose yourself. Your power, your position. Yes. He didn't flinch from it. Yes, I did. And it's been killing me. Good. The word came out sharper than she intended. Cale recoiled like she'd struck him. Good? He repeated quietly. You left me. Lara's voice was shaking now. You made promises. You said you'd come back. You said you'd prove it was real. And then when things got hard, when you actually had to risk something, you ran. I know. Do you? Do you understand what that did to me? She was crying now, couldn't stop. I let myself believe you. I let myself hope. And you proved everyone right. You proved my mother right. You proved I was exactly as worthless as she always said. Alara, no. So yeah. She wiped her face roughly. Good. I'm glad it's been killing you. I'm glad the bond hurts. I'm glad you're suffering, because I've been suffering for 3 weeks and you don't get to just show up and expect me to. She couldn't finish. Cale's expression was devastated. You're right. About all of it. I fucked up. I chose wrong. I hurt you. His voice cracked. And I know saying I'm sorry isn't enough. I know showing up here doesn't fix anything. But I had to. I couldn't. Why? Alara cut him off. Why come back? Why not just let the bond fade like Lady Thorne said it would? Cale went very still. What? Lady Thorne. She came to see me. Told me you chose power over me. Told me the bond would fade and you'd forget. When? Today. A few hours ago. Something dangerous flashed across Cale's face. What exactly did she say? Does it matter? She was right, wasn't she? You did choose... Alara. His voice went hard, cold. What exactly did Lady Thorne say to you? The sudden shift in his tone made her pause. She said you chose the territories when the noble houses gave you an ultimatum. That you picked power. That the bond would fade. Anything else? That you'd forgotten me. That I didn't matter. Cale's jaw tightened. She lied. About what? All of it. He was breathing hard now. The noble houses did give me an ultimatum, and I did tell them I'd choose the territories, but I never forgot you. The bond hasn't faded, and I came back because I realized... He stopped, took a breath. I realized I'd rather lose everything than lose you. Then why send the letter? Because I'm a coward. The words came out flat, self-loathing. Because I convinced myself you'd be better off without me. That I was protecting you by staying away. But I was really just protecting myself. From having to risk everything. From having to actually prove what you meant to me. Alara stared at him. I don't believe you. I know. You're just saying what I want to hear. No. His voice was fierce. I'm saying what I should have said 3 weeks ago. I'm saying I choose you over the territories, over the noble houses, over everything. Prove it. The words came out before she could stop them. Cale met her eyes. How? Give it up. Alara's voice was shaking. If you mean what you're saying, if you really choose me, then give it up. Walk away from your position, from your power, from all of it. Alara, you said you'd rather lose everything than lose me. Prove it. The silence that followed was crushing. Cale stared at her, and she could see the war on his face. The calculation, the fear, the exact same fear she'd seen in the mirror every day for 3 weeks. I can't, he said finally. The words landed like a death sentence. Alara felt something inside her shatter completely. Then get out. Alara, please. I said get out. She was screaming now. You don't get to come here and tell me I matter and then refuse to prove it. You don't get to ask me to believe you when you won't back it up. You don't... Her voice broke. Cale didn't move. I can't give up the territories, he said quietly. Not because they matter more than you, but because thousands of people depend on me. Because walking away would cause real harm, real suffering, and I can't do that just to prove a point. Then we're done. No. Yes. Alara forced herself to look at him. Because you want me to trust you, to believe you choose me. But you won't do the one thing that would actually prove it. So either you're lying or you're asking me to accept being second place for the rest of my life. And I can't. I won't. You're not second place. Then what am I? The question hung between them. Cale opened his mouth, closed it, and Alara understood. He didn't have an answer. Because the truth was, she would always be second, behind his duties, his territories, his responsibilities. She'd been right all along. Leave, she said quietly, and this time, don't come back. Alara, I mean it, Cale. If you come back here, if you try this again, Her voice broke. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep hoping you'll choose me when you've made it clear you won't. I am choosing you. No, you're not. She was crying again. You're choosing yourself, your comfort, your ability to have everything without actually sacrificing anything. And I'm done being the thing you want but won't fight for. The words fell like blows. Cale's face went pale. If I walk away from the territories, he said slowly, people will suffer. The trade agreements will collapse. The northern provinces will revolt. Everything I've built will fall apart. Is that what you want? I want you to love me more than you love power. I do. Then prove it. Alara was shaking now. Not with words, not with promises, with action, with choice, with actual sacrifice. I'm here, aren't I? I left the territories to come here. For how long? She cut him off. How long before you have to go back? How long before the next crisis? The next emergency session? How long before I'm alone again, waiting for you to choose me and watching you choose them? Cale didn't answer, because they both knew the truth. That's what I thought, Alara said quietly. She stepped back, started to close the door. Cale's hand caught it. Don't, he said. Please don't do this. I'm not doing anything. Her voice was dead. You did this. 3 weeks ago when you sent that letter. Today when you showed up here thinking pretty words would fix everything. This whole time when you've been trying to have both without actually committing to either. That's not fair. Life's not fair. She met his eyes. You taught me that. She pulled the door closed. Cale stood on the other side, his hand still pressed against the wood. I love you, he said through the door. Inside, Alara pressed her own hand to the wood, felt the ghost of warmth, felt nothing else. The bond was silent, dead, just like Lady Thorne said. No, you don't, she whispered. She walked away from the door, away from him, away from every stupid hope she'd let herself believe. Behind her, she heard him start to say something, then stop, then, finally, leave. The workshop fell silent. And Alara stood in the dark, wrapped in the ghost of colors that would never bloom again, and understood what her mother had been trying to tell her all along. Love wasn't enough. It was never enough. Not when the person you loved wouldn't choose you over everything else. She should feel vindicated, should feel like she'd finally learned the lesson. Instead, she just felt empty. Hollow. Like something vital had been carved out and nothing would ever fill the space. She picked up Cale's letter from where she'd left it. Read it one more time. Our agreement is hereby terminated. Then she did what she should have done 3 weeks ago. She burned it. Watched the expensive paper curl and blacken. Watched the formal words disappear into ash, and promised herself she'd never be stupid enough to hope again. Outside, storm clouds gathered. Inside, the fire died. And in the space between what was and what could have been, something ancient and impossible. The bond didn't die. That's what Cale discovered in the days after Alara closed the door in his face. It should have faded. Every text he'd ever read about marking bonds said they couldn't survive rejection, couldn't persist when both parties weren't willing. But this one did. It burned. Constant and vicious, like a hook lodged in his sternum that pulled tighter every hour he stayed away from her. Some nights he woke up gasping, clutching his chest, convinced something was physically tearing him apart from the inside. Marcus found him like that on the 4th night back in the capital, sprawled on the floor of his chambers, breathing like he'd run a marathon. "Get up." "I can't." "Yes, you can." Marcus hauled him to his feet without sympathy. "You're the ruler of the Eastern Territories. Act like it." Cale shoved him away hard enough to send him stumbling. "Don't talk to me about ruling. Don't talk to me about responsibility. Don't talk to me about any of it. Then what should I talk about?" Marcus straightened his clothes, voice cold. "Should I talk about how you've missed 3 council sessions? How the southern provinces are getting nervous again? How Lady Thorne is positioning herself to challenge your authority?" "Fuck Lady Thorne. That's what got you into this mess." Cale's fist connected with Marcus's jaw before either of them saw it coming. Marcus hit the floor. Didn't get up immediately. Just touched his split lip and looked at Cale with something like satisfaction. "There you are." He stood slowly. "I was starting to think you'd forgotten how to fight." Cale's hands were shaking. "I'm not fighting you." "No, you're fighting yourself." Marcus moved closer, fearless. "You're fighting what you want versus what you think you should want. You're fighting the bond versus your duty. You're fighting Alara's expectations versus your own limitations. I know what I'm fighting. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you've already lost." The words landed like blows. Cale stared at his oldest friend and saw the truth written in his expression. He had lost. He'd lost Alara the moment he'd written that letter. Lost her trust when he'd chosen the easy lie over the hard truth. Lost any chance they'd had when he'd shown up at her workshop and failed, again, to prove she mattered more than his position. "What do you want me to do?" Cale's voice came out raw. Broken. "Tell me what I'm supposed to do. How I'm supposed to choose between her and thousands of people who depend on me. Tell me how to make that math work." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You can't. I know, so stop trying. Choose one. Commit. Live with the consequences. And if I choose wrong, then at least you'll know." Marcus's voice softened slightly. "But this limbo you're living in, it's killing you, and it's making you useless to everyone, including her." Cale closed his eyes. The bond pulsed in his chest, angry and insistent. "She told me to leave, told me not to come back." "And are you going to listen?" The question hung in the air. Cale thought about Alara's face when she'd closed the door. The resignation in her eyes, the way she'd looked at him like he was exactly what she'd expected all along, someone who'd promised everything and delivered nothing. He thought about the territories, the people depending on him, the trade agreements and border disputes and political maneuvering that required his constant attention. He thought about the bond screaming at him to go back, to claim what was his, to stop letting fear and duty dictate his choices. He thought about what it meant to be a ruler, what it cost, what it required. And he thought about what it meant to be a man, not a sovereign, not a political entity, just a man who'd found something real and was too much of a coward to fight for it. "No," he said finally, "I'm not going to listen." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "Meaning she's wrong." Cale's voice was getting stronger, steadier. "She's wrong about me, about what I'm capable of, about what I'm willing to sacrifice." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm done choosing." Cale met Marcus's eyes directly. "I'm done pretending I can have both by compromising on everything. I'm done playing politics with my own life. Cale, I'm bringing her here." His voice was absolute, final, to the capital, to the territories. "And I'm making it work. The noble houses will never accept, then they can leave." Cale's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Every single one of them. I built this territory from chaos. I held it together through 3 succession crises and 2 border wars. I earned this position. And if they think they can force me to choose between my bondmate and my crown, they're about to learn exactly how much of a mistake that is." Marcus stared at him. "You're serious, completely. You'll start a civil war. Then I'll win it." Cale was moving now, purpose flooding back into his limbs. "Get me everything we have on Lady Thorne. Every transaction, every alliance, every conversation. I want to know who she's been talking to and what she's been planning. You think she's—" "I know she is." Cale's mind was racing, pieces clicking into place. "She went to Harrowmere, told Alara I'd forgotten her, told her the bond would fade. That's not concern. That's sabotage. Why would she sabotage you? Because she wants my position. Marcus's expression shifted as understanding dawned, and she knew the fastest way to destabilize me was to destroy the bond, make Alara believe I'd abandoned her, make me believe she'd rejected me, keep us apart until the bond killed me or drove me insane. Cale finished, making me unfit to rule and opening the door for a successor. Marcus stopped, took a breath. That's actually brilliant. Ruthless, but brilliant, which is why it's going to fail. Cale was already moving toward his desk, pulling out maps and documents, because she made one critical error. What's that? She assumed I'd stay away, that I'd accept losing Alara as the cost of keeping my position. Cale looked up and his eyes were hard, cold, the eyes of someone who'd spent 9 years learning to be ruthless when necessary. She didn't account for the possibility that I'd burn the whole system down rather than lose her. You're really going to do this? Watch me. Aussie. In Harrowmere, Alara was dying by inches. Not literally. She woke up every morning, worked every day, went through all the motions of living. But inside, where it mattered, something was shutting down. The bond, which she'd convinced herself was dead, wasn't. It was just hollow, empty, like an open wound that wouldn't close but couldn't quite bleed out either. Some nights she woke up gasping, her chest tight with a pain that had no physical source. Some days she'd be in the middle of dyeing fabric and suddenly have to stop because her hands were shaking too badly to control the color. Her mother noticed. Of course she did. You're fading, Viren said one evening, standing in the workshop doorway like a specter. Watching yourself disappear and doing nothing to stop it. Alara didn't look up from her work. I'm fine. You're dying. Viren moved closer. I've seen it before. Seen what happens when someone gives up on living and just goes through motions. Is there a point to this? Yes. Viren's voice was quieter than Alara had ever heard it. Stop punishing yourself for hoping. It's the hoping that makes us human. Losing hope is what makes us ghosts. Alara finally looked up. Since when do you care about me being human? Something flickered across Viren's face. Pain, maybe. Or regret. Since I realized I spent 20 years teaching you to be like me, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. The words hung between them. Alara stared at her mother and saw, for the first time, something like genuine emotion beneath the carefully maintained coldness. Why are you telling me this? Because he came back. Viren's voice was steady, matter of fact. Your ruler, he came back once, which means he might come back again. And when he does, you're going to have to decide if you're brave enough to let him. I told him not to come back. And if he listens, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what if. Viren moved to the door, paused. But if he doesn't, if he's stupid enough to keep trying, then you need to decide if you're going to keep punishing him for being human, for being scared, for making the exact same mistakes you've been making. You told him to prove he loved you by giving up everything. Viren's voice was sharp now. Cutting. Do you have any idea how cruel that is? How impossible? You asked him to destroy his entire life just to prove a point, and when he couldn't do it, you used it as evidence that you were right all along about being unlovable. That's not... Yes, it is. Viren's expression was hard. I did the same thing to your father, tested him, made him prove over and over that he loved me, and when he died and couldn't pass the final test, I convinced myself I'd been right all along. That love was a lie, that everyone leaves. She stopped, took a breath. Don't be me, Alara. Don't waste your life building walls so thick that nothing can get in, not even the things worth having. She left, and Alara sat alone in her workshop, her mother's words echoing in her head. Had she been testing him? Setting impossible standards because she'd already decided he'd fail? Had she asked him to give up everything because that was the only proof she'd believe, because anything less left room for doubt? Had she been so convinced she was unworthy that she'd sabotaged the one thing that might have proved her wrong? The questions burned. She tried to push them away, tried to go back to work, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The bond pulsed in her chest, hollow, aching, alive. And for the first time since Cale had left, Alara let herself wonder if maybe, possibly, she'd been wrong. Cale spent 3 days gathering evidence. Marcus worked beside him, combing through records and reports, tracking Lady Thorne's movements and communications over the last month. The picture that emerged was damning. She'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months, carefully positioning allies within the noble houses, spreading rumors about Cale's fitness to rule, applying pressure through the southern province's trade agreement. And then, when the opportunity presented itself, she'd gone to Harrowmere. Fed Alara just enough truth mixed with lies to destroy any remaining trust. It was masterful political maneuvering. It was also treason. "We have enough to move against her," Marcus said on the third night. "We can bring formal charges. Have her removed from the council." "No." "No?" Cale looked up from the documents spread across his desk. "That's too clean, too simple. She tried to destroy my bond, tried to drive Alara and me apart, tried to break me. So what do you want to do?" "I want to make an example." Cale's voice was cold. "Absolute. I want every noble house in the territories to understand exactly what happens when you come after what's mine." "You're talking about a purge. I'm talking about clarity." Cale stood, moved to the window. The capital sprawled below him, lit by torches and moonlight. "For 9 years, I've ruled by consensus, by negotiation, by making everyone feel heard and valued. And what did it get me? A council that thinks it can dictate my personal life, that thinks it can threaten the one thing that matters to me, and I'll just accept it. They were trying to protect the territories. They were trying to control me. There's a difference." Cale's hands clenched on the windowsill. "And I'm done allowing it. What's your plan? Call an emergency council session, all 20 houses, tomorrow. And then I'm going to give them a choice, accept my bondmate or lose their positions, every single one of them." Marcus went pale. "Cale, that's necessary." Cale turned from the window. "You said it yourself. I need to commit, make a choice, and live with the consequences. Well, I'm choosing Alara, and anyone who has a problem with that can leave. You'll destabilize the territories will survive. They survived before I took over. They'll survive if I have to rebuild the council from scratch." Cale's voice was absolute. "But I won't survive without her. The bond won't let me. So this isn't about what's politically wise. This is about what's necessary for me to function. And if that means burning down the power structure and starting over, then that's what I'll do." Marcus stared at him for a long moment. "You've changed." "No." Cale's voice was quiet. "I just finally figured out what's worth fighting for, Sham." The emergency council session was called for noon the next day. All 20 noble houses answered the summons. They filed into the chamber with carefully neutral expressions, but Cale could feel the tension, the anticipation. They thought he was going to announce a decision about the southern provinces, or perhaps a new trade initiative. They had no idea what was coming. Cale took his seat at the head of the table and waited for silence. "Thank you for coming," he started. His voice was calm, conversational. "I know this was short notice. We're always available for territorial business," Lord Heron said carefully, "though we were surprised by the urgency." "Were you?" Cale smiled. "It wasn't friendly." "That's interesting, because some of you have been conducting urgent business behind my back for weeks." The temperature in the room dropped. "I don't know what you mean," Lady Thorne said smoothly. "If there's been some miscommunication, there's been treason." The word fell like a blade. Several nobles shifted uncomfortably. Lady Thorne's expression didn't change. "That's a serious accusation," she said quietly. "It's a serious crime." Cale pulled out a document, slid it across the table. "This is a record of your correspondence with the southern provinces, specifically the letters where you encouraged them to threaten our trade agreements unless I return from Harrowmere immediately." Silence. "And this," he pulled out another document, "is a witness statement from a merchant in Harrowmere. A merchant who saw you speaking with my bondmate, telling her I'd forgotten her, that the bond would fade, that I'd chosen power over her." Lady Thorne's calm finally cracked, slightly. I was trying to help her understand reality. "You were trying to destroy our bond." Cale's voice was quiet, deadly. "You were trying to drive us apart because you knew a destabilized ruler would be easier to remove. This was never about protecting the territories. This was about seizing power." That's absurd. Is it? Kale stood. Then explain why you've been meeting with 5 other noble houses. Why you've been discussing succession. Why you've been positioning yourself as my replacement. He pulled out more documents, laid them on the table one by one. The evidence was overwhelming. Lady Thorne stared at the papers, her expression calculating. Around the table, other nobles were going pale, especially the 5 she'd been meeting with. Even if what you're suggesting is true, Lady Thorne said carefully, it doesn't change the fundamental problem. You abandoned your duties for a woman. You put personal desire over territorial need. I took 2 weeks away from the capital. Kale's voice was steel. Everything continued to function. Every decision that needed to be made was made. The only crisis was the one you manufactured. We gave you an ultimatum because you thought you could control me. Kale moved around the table slowly, deliberately. You thought you could force me to choose between my position and my bondmate. You thought I'd cave. Choose the safe option. Prove that I valued power more than anything else. He stopped behind Lady Thorne's chair. You were wrong. The room held its breath. Here's what's going to happen, Kale continued. Lady Thorne, you're removed from the council effective immediately. Formal treason charges will be filed. You have until sunset to leave the territories. You can't— Yes, I can. His voice was absolute. And the 5 houses she's been conspiring with, he looked at them each in turn. You have a choice. Publicly renounce this plot and accept my bondmate when I bring her to the capital, or join Lady Thorne in exile. This is insanity, one of them, Lord Garrett said. You can't restructure the entire council because of a woman. I'm not restructuring it because of her. Kale's voice was cold. I'm restructuring it because you forgot who you serve. This council exists to advise me, to support territorial governance, not to dictate my personal life or threaten what's mine. We were protecting— You were overstepping, and I'm correcting that. Permanently. He moved back to his seat, sat down. The rest of you have the same choice. Accept that I will have a bondmate. Accept that she will be part of this court. Accept that attempting to interfere with that bond is treason. Or leave. The silence was crushing. Finally, Lord Heron spoke. And if we accept, what guarantees do we have that you won't neglect your duties again? You don't get guarantees. Kale met his eyes directly. You get my word that I'll continue to rule as I have for 9 years, effectively, strategically, with the territory's best interests in mind. But you don't get to hold my personal life hostage to ensure my compliance. That stops now. That's not acceptable. Then leave. Kale's voice didn't rise, didn't need to. But understand this. If you choose to fight me on this, I will win. I will dismantle this council piece by piece and rebuild it with people who understand boundaries. People who understand that ruling doesn't mean surrendering every aspect of your humanity. He looked around the table. I spent 9 years being what you needed me to be. Dutiful, controlled, focused. And I was good at it, but I was also empty. And then I found something that filled that emptiness. Something real. And I'm not giving that up to make you comfortable. The words hung in the air. The choice is yours, Kale finished. But make it now. Because I'm leaving for Harrowmere in an hour. And when I come back, I'm bringing my bondmate with me. Anyone who has a problem with that can be gone by the time we arrive. He stood, session adjourned, and walked out before anyone could respond. Marcus found him in his chambers 20 minutes later. That was the most reckless thing I've ever seen you do, probably. 6 of them are threatening to leave, including Heron. Let them. Kale, I meant what I said. Kale was packing, moving with focused efficiency. I'm done playing games, done pretending I can negotiate my way through this. Either they accept Alara or they don't. But I'm not compromising anymore. And if it destroys the territories, it won't. Kale stopped, looked at Marcus directly. You know why? Because most of those nobles are more interested in keeping their positions than in making a point. They'll grumble. They'll complain. But they'll fall in line because the alternative is losing everything they've built. And the ones who won't weren't truly loyal anyway. Better to know now than when it actually matters. Marcus shook his head. You've bet everything on this. I know. And if she says no, if you get to Harrowmere and Alara still refuses, then I'll have lost everything for nothing. Kale's voice was quiet. But at least I'll know I tried. At least I'll know I actually fought for something I wanted instead of just accepting what everyone else told me I should want. That's not a strategy. That's hope. It's all I have left. The words fell between them. Marcus studied his friend's face and saw something he'd never seen before. Not calculation, not strategy, just raw, desperate determination. You really love her, he said quietly. More than I thought I could love anything. Even more than this? Marcus gestured to the room. The castle. Everything outside, especially more than this. Kale went back to packing, because this, all of it, is just power, just position. But she's real, she's human, she's everything I didn't know I was missing. What if she doesn't believe you? Then I'll keep trying until she does. Or until the bond kills me. Whichever comes first, that's insane. I know. Kale closed the bag. But I'm done being sane. Sanity is what got me into this mess. Sanity is what made me write that letter and send it instead of fighting. Sanity is what convinced me I could have both without risking either. And now? Now I'm risking everything. On the slim chance that she'll give me one more opportunity to prove I'm not who she thinks I am. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'm coming with you. No, you're not. Yes, I am. Marcus's voice was firm. Because if this goes wrong, if the territories actually do destabilize, someone needs to be there to pick up the pieces. And if it goes right, if she actually says yes, someone needs to witness it. Make it official. Kale looked at him. Really looked. You think I'm doing the right thing? It wasn't a question. I think you're doing the only thing you can do and still be able to live with yourself. Marcus's voice was quiet. And I think that matters more than politics. They stood there for a moment. These two men who'd built a territory together, fought wars together, survived impossible odds together. Thank you, Kale said finally. Don't thank me yet. We still have to convince her. We? Fine. You have to convince her. I'll just stand there and look official. Kale almost smiled. Then let's go iki each. Mkwa. They rode through the night. Kale pushed the pace hard, too hard probably, but the bond was screaming at him now, pulling like a rope around his chest, and every mile closer to Harrowmere made it easier to breathe, made the possibility feel real. What are you going to say to her? Marcus asked as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon. I don't know. You don't know? I've tried pretty words. I've tried promises. I've tried explaining. Kale's hands were tight on the reins. None of it worked because she's convinced I'm going to leave, convinced she's not worth staying for. So words aren't going to fix this. Then what will? Action, proof. Burning down everything that stands between us and showing her I meant it. You already did that. You dismantled your council. No. Kale's voice was quiet. I gave them an ultimatum. That's different from actually destroying everything. If she says yes, the council will accept it. If she says no, I've gained nothing. So what's your plan? Show her that I already chose, that this isn't theoretical anymore, that I'm not asking her to trust promises. I'm asking her to accept reality. Marcus didn't respond. They rode in silence as the sun climbed higher. Harrowmere appeared on the horizon just after noon. The canal town looked exactly the same. Gray buildings, busy market, water-reflecting sky. But everything felt different. Kale could feel her now. The bond was singing, pulling, almost painful in its intensity. She was close. He dismounted at the edge of town, leaving the horses with Marcus. You're walking in? Marcus asked. Yes. Want backup? No. Kale's voice was steady. This is something I need to do alone. He walked through the market slowly. People stared. They recognized him now, whispered as he passed. The stranger who'd courted their local dyer and disappeared. The ruler who'd abandoned her. Let them stare, let them judge. He was here for one person. Her workshop came into view. Blue door, stone walls, exactly as he remembered. Kale stopped outside and realized his hands were shaking. This was it. The moment everything hinged on. He could turn around, go back, accept that he'd lost her, and learn to live with the bond's slow erosion. Or he could knock on that door and risk her destroying him completely. The choice was obvious. He knocked, silence, then footsteps. The door opened. Alara stood there, and Kale's breath caught. She looked terrible. Thinner than before, dark circles under her eyes, her hands stained with fresh dye but shaking slightly. The bond between them flared to life, gold, green, violet blooming so bright it hurt to look at. She gasped, stepped back. No. Her voice was barely a whisper. Kale didn't move, didn't push, just stood there and let her see him. Let her see what the last 3 weeks had cost. You can't be here, Alara said. I told you. I know what you told me. His voice was quiet, steady. And I'm here anyway. Why? Because I was wrong. About everything, and I need you to hear it. I don't want to hear... Then don't listen to my words. Kale cut her off gently. Look at the bond. Look at what's happening right now between us. She looked down. The colors were swirling between them, alive, fierce, undeniable, brighter than they'd ever been. It didn't fade, Kale said quietly. Lady Thorne lied to you. The bond didn't fade. It's been screaming at me every second we've been apart, pulling me back to you like gravity. That doesn't mean I dismantled my council. The words stopped her. What? I called an emergency session, presented evidence of Lady Thorne's treason, gave every noble house an ultimatum, accept you or leave. 6 of them are probably gone by now. Kale's voice was steady. I destroyed the power structure I spent 9 years building because they tried to make me choose between you and ruling, and I chose you. Alara stared at him. You're lying. No. He pulled out a document, handed it to her. This is the official record, signed by Marcus, witnessed by the entire council. I chose you, Alara, publicly, irrevocably. I burned it all down because you were right. I needed to prove it with action, not words. She took the document with shaking hands. Read it. Her face went pale. This is... You actually... I told you I would. Kale's voice was soft. You didn't believe me because I kept trying to have both, kept trying to negotiate my way through. But you were right. There was no negotiation. There was only choice. So I chose. The paper fell from her fingers. Why? Her voice broke. Why would you do this? Because I love you. The words came out simple. True. Because every moment away from you has been torture. Because the bond won't let me forget you, and I wouldn't want to, even if it did. Because you are worth more than power or position or anything else I thought mattered. Tears were streaming down her face now. You're going to regret it, she whispered. When the territories fall apart. When you realize what you gave up, then I'll regret it. Kale stepped closer. But I'd rather regret choosing you than spend the rest of my life regretting that I let fear win. That I let you go because it was safer than fighting. I asked you to give up everything. And I did. His voice was fierce now. I gave it up. Not because you demanded it, but because I finally understood that everything without you is nothing. The bond was blazing between them now. So bright Alara had to close her eyes against it. When she opened them again, Kale was right there. Close enough to touch. I'm not asking you to trust me, he said quietly. I'm asking you to look at what I've already done. To see that this isn't a promise anymore. It's a fact. I chose you. Over the council. Over the territories. Over everything. Now you get to choose whether that was enough. His hand reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their fingers touched. And the world. The world didn't explode into color this time. It erupted. The bond detonated between them like something that had been compressed too long, held back by too much fear and doubt and distance. Gold and green and violet blazed so bright that Alara had to close her eyes against the intensity. But even through closed lids, she could see it, feel it, burning through every nerve ending in her body. This wasn't the gentle pulse from before. This was recognition and rage and relief all tangled together. This was the bond saying finally, finally, finally. Kale's hand tightened around hers and she felt him shaking, felt the tremor run through both of them as 3 weeks of separation and pain and loneliness crashed into the simple fact of touching again. She opened her eyes. He was staring at their joined hands like he couldn't believe they were real, like he expected her to vanish any second. The colors were still swirling between them, but they were changing now, settling. Instead of the chaotic explosion, they were weaving together, gold threading through green, violet blooming where they intersected, creating patterns, creating something that looked almost like fabric, like her work. "I see it," Cale said quietly. His voice was raw. "What you do, how you turn water into color. It's like this, like the bond." Alara couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight. "You take something formless and make it permanent," he continued. "You take chaos and create structure. You take what everyone else thinks is impossible and make it real." His eyes lifted to hers. "That's what you did to me. You took everything I thought I was, everything I thought I had to be, and showed me it was all just water, formless, temporary. And then you showed me what permanent actually looks like." "Stop," Alara whispered. "Please stop." "Why?" "Because I don't know how to—" The words wouldn't come. Couldn't come. Because what he was saying was everything she'd ever wanted to hear and everything she'd taught herself not to believe. And the cognitive dissonance was tearing her apart. Cale didn't let go of her hand, didn't push closer, just stood there, solid and real, while the bond painted them both in impossible light. "I meant what I said," he told her quietly. "I dismantled the council. I chose you. And I'm not asking you to believe it was easy or noble or anything other than what it was, self-preservation, because living without you was killing me. That's the bond talking. No." His voice was firm. "The bond is why I can't forget you. But the choice to come back, to actually fight for this instead of just accepting loss, that was me. That was the part of me that finally understood that some things are worth burning the world down for." Alara's vision was blurring with tears. "You shouldn't have done it. You shouldn't have given up everything for what?" He cut her off gently. "For you? Why not? What makes your work worth protecting but my bondmate worth abandoning? What makes the territory's needs valid but mine meaningless?" The questions hit like physical blows. "Because people depend on you," Alara said desperately. "Because you're responsible for thousands of lives and I'm just what? One person?" Cale's voice went hard. "Do you know what I've learned in the last 3 weeks? That I can delegate everything. Every single responsibility I thought only I could handle, someone else can do. Marcus can manage the trade agreements. The military commanders can handle border security. The council, what's left of it, can advise on policy. Then what's the point of you?" The question came out harsher than she intended. Cale didn't flinch. "That's what I've been asking myself." His voice was quiet now, thoughtful. "What's the point of being a ruler if I'm completely replaceable? If everything I do can be done by someone else, what am I actually contributing?" He paused, met her eyes. "And I realize the answer is nothing. I'm contributing nothing that matters. Nothing that's actually mine. I've spent 9 years being a competent administrator, a skilled negotiator, a strategic leader. But I've never been anything more than that. Never been someone who actually mattered as a person instead of as a position." "That's not true." "It is." He said it with absolute certainty. "Until you. You're the first thing, the only thing, that's been mine. Not because of my title or my power or what I can provide, just because of who I am, and losing you, would make everything else meaningless." Alara was crying openly now. "You can't put that on me. You can't make me responsible for your entire sense of purpose." "I'm not." Cale's thumb brushed her knuckles, and the violet pulsed in response. "I'm saying you showed me what having a purpose actually feels like. You showed me the difference between being useful and being essential. And I'm choosing essential, even if it costs me useful." The words settled between them like stones in still water. Alara looked at this man who'd given up everything for her, this ruler who'd burned his own power structure rather than lose her. This stranger who'd seen past all her defenses and decided she was worth fighting for. And she realized something. She'd been testing him. Her mother had been right about that. She'd been setting impossible standards because passing them was the only way she'd believe he was real. But the test was rigged. She'd designed it so he'd fail. Because if he failed, she could protect herself. Could prove she'd been right all along about being unworthy. Could avoid the terrifying vulnerability of actually being chosen. "I'm sorry," she heard herself say. Cale blinked. "What?" "I'm sorry." The words came faster now. I asked you to prove you loved me by destroying yourself. I made you choose between me and everything you'd built because I was too afraid to believe you could have both. I sabotaged us because sabotage was safer than hope. Alara, and you were right. She was crying harder now. What I asked was cruel, impossible. I gave you a test designed to fail because I'd already decided you would. Because everyone always does. Because I'm... Don't. His voice was fierce. Don't finish that sentence. Don't tell me what you think you are based on what other people made you believe. Then what am I? You're the woman I chose. His hands came up to cup her face, and the colors exploded again. You're the reason I'm here. You're the thing I'd rather have than power or position or anything else I thought mattered. And you're done apologizing for existing. The certainty in his voice broke something in her. Some final wall she'd been maintaining. Some last defense against believing this was real. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. How to be someone worth choosing. You already are. Kale's forehead pressed against hers. You've always been. You just needed someone to see it, to prove it. And I'm going to keep proving it until you believe me. What if I never do? Then I'll keep trying anyway. His voice was absolute. Because that's what love is. Not giving up when it gets hard. Not walking away when someone can't believe they're worthy. Just staying. Just choosing. Every single day. Even if it costs you everything? Especially then. The words fell between them like a vow. Alara stared into his eyes and saw the truth there. Saw that he meant it. That this wasn't temporary insanity or bond-induced obsession. This was choice. Deliberate. Conscious. Real. And for the first time in her life, she let herself believe it. I choose you too, she said quietly. Kale went very still. What? I choose you. The words came easier now, despite the fear, despite knowing it might not last, despite everything my mother taught me about protecting myself. I choose this. I choose you. The bond detonated again. But this time it wasn't chaotic. This time the colors wove together deliberately, creating something that looked like lace. Like the most delicate, complex fabric Alara had ever imagined. Like something that would hold. Kale kissed her. It wasn't desperate this time, wasn't frantic or afraid. It was slow, deliberate. Like he was memorizing the taste of her. Like he had all the time in the world and intended to use every second. The colors wrapped around them both, pulsing with their heartbeats, painting them in light that shouldn't exist. When they finally broke apart, they were both shaking. Come with me, Kale said. His voice was rough. Back to the capital. Let me show you what I gave up for you. Let me prove it wasn't just words. Alara's first instinct was to refuse, to protect herself by staying in familiar territory, but she'd just chosen him, which meant she had to actually be brave enough to follow through. Okay, she whispered. His expression transformed. Really? Really? Her voice was stronger now. On one condition. Name it. You let me bring my work. She gestured to the workshop around them. I'm not giving this up. Not for you. Not for anyone. This is mine. This is what I built. And I need you to understand that choosing you doesn't mean erasing myself. I wouldn't want you to. Kale's voice was fierce. Your work is part of who you are. Part of what makes you extraordinary. I'd never ask you to give that up. Even if it means I'm not always available. Even if it means I have priorities that aren't you. Especially then. He smiled. I don't want a woman who exists only to support me. I want a partner, someone with her own strength, her own purpose, someone who chooses me but doesn't need me. That's a strange thing to want, maybe, but it's what I want anyway. His hands tightened on hers. I've had people who needed me, who depended on me, who'd fall apart without me. And it's exhausting, it's suffocating, but you'd survive without me, thrive even. And knowing that makes your choice to stay so much more valuable. Alara felt something shift in her chest, some fundamental understanding clicking into place. This was what partnership actually looked like. Not someone saving her, not someone completing her, just someone choosing to walk beside her, someone who saw her strength instead of her brokenness, someone who wanted her, not needed her. When do we leave? She asked. Tomorrow. Tonight. Whenever you're ready. Kale's voice was soft. I'm not in a hurry. For the first time in weeks, I can actually breathe. So we can take as long as you need. Alara looked around her workshop. at the dye vats and the fabric and the life she'd built in this small stone building. She'd thought this was all she'd ever have, all she'd ever be. But maybe it was just the beginning. "Let me pack," she said. They left Harrowmere at dawn 3 days later. Alara had spent the time carefully packing her supplies, arranging for her workshop to be maintained in her absence, and having one final conversation with her mother. Viren had come to the workshop the night before they left, standing in the doorway like she wasn't sure she had permission to enter. "You're really going," she said quietly. Alara didn't look up from the fabric she was folding. "Yes." "With him." "Yes." Viren was silent for a long moment. Then, "I was wrong about you." Alara's hand stilled. "What?" "I spent 23 years telling you that you were broken, too much, unlovable." She moved closer. "And I was wrong. You were never any of those things. You were just honest, unfiltered, real. And I couldn't handle that because I'd spent so long pretending to be something else." Alara turned slowly. Her mother's face was carefully composed, but there were cracks in the mask, genuine emotion bleeding through. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I don't want you to leave thinking I never loved you." Viren's voice was quiet. "I did. I do. I just didn't know how to show it, didn't know how to be vulnerable with someone who felt everything so intensely." "You hurt me." The words came out flat. "For years. Systematically. Deliberately. I know. You made me believe I was worthless. I know. And now you think one conversation fixes that?" "No." Viren's voice was steady. "I know it doesn't. I know I can't undo what I've done. But I needed you to know that it was never about you. It was always about me. My fear, my inability to handle the kind of raw emotion you carried." Alara stared at her mother and felt something strange. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. "I'm not going to forget," she said quietly. "I'm not going to pretend the last 23 years didn't happen. I'm not asking you to, but I'm also not going to let it define me anymore." Alara's voice was stronger now. "I'm not going to carry your damage as my identity. I'm not going to believe your fears are truth." "Good." Viren's lips trembled slightly. That's good." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Viren moved closer, reached out slowly. Alara didn't pull away. Her mother's hand touched her cheek gently, the first gentle touch Alara could remember in years. "Be happy," Viren whispered. "Be everything I was too afraid to be." Then she left, and Alara stood alone in her workshop, feeling the weight of 23 years slowly lifting. Not gone, never gone, but lighter, manageable, survivable. Tikais. The capital was everything Harrowmere wasn't. Massive, crowded, built from gray stone that climbed hillsides like a monument to human ambition. The castle sat at the summit, imposing and beautiful and absolutely terrifying. Alara rode beside Kale as they approached, her hands white-knuckled on the reins. "It's going to be fine," Kale said quietly. "You don't know that." "Oh, yes I do." He looked at her. "Because you're not walking in there alone. You're not facing them without support. And anyone who tries to make you feel unwelcome is going to answer to me. That's not going to make this easier. Maybe not, but it'll make it survivable." His voice was steady. "And that's all we need. Survival first. Everything else we can build." They rode through the gates. People stared. Of course they did. The ruler returning with a common woman, with his bondmate, with living proof that he'd meant what he'd said about choosing her over everything. Marcus met them in the courtyard, his expression carefully neutral. "How bad is it?" Kale asked, dismounting. "Could be worse. 6 houses left like you predicted. 4 more are considering it. The remaining 10 are, let's call it cautiously supportive, meaning they're waiting to see if this actually works before they commit either way." Marcus's eyes flicked to Alara. "No pressure," she managed a weak smile. "None at all." "The council wants to meet with you," Marcus continued. "Tonight. Formal session." "Fine." Kale's voice was calm. "We'll be there. Both of you," Marcus clarified. "They want to meet her. Officially." Alara felt ice flood her veins. I don't know how to..." You don't have to know anything. Kale's hand found hers, and the bond pulsed warm between them. Just be yourself. That's all I'm asking. Myself isn't exactly counsel appropriate. Good, he smiled, because counsel appropriate is exactly what got us into this mess. We're doing something different now. Bats. The council chamber was exactly as intimidating as Alara had imagined. Massive circular table, high ceilings, expensive everything, and 14 pairs of eyes watching her with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. She wanted to run. Instead, she kept her hand in Kyle's and forced herself to breathe. He led her to 2 seats at the head of the table, sat down, waited for her to do the same. The room held its breath. This is Alara Vance, KL said simply. My bondmate. She'll be residing in the capital permanently and participating in court functions as appropriate. Silence. Then Lord Heron, the old noble who'd challenged Kale before, spoke. No formal introduction, no explanation of her background or qualifications. No. Kale's voice was flat. She's my bondmate. That's her qualification. The bond isn't recognized in territorial law. Then we'll change the law. Kale met his eyes directly. I'm not negotiating this, Heron. I told you what was happening. This is me following through. More silence. Then a younger woman, Lady Chen, Alara would learn later, leaned forward. What do you know about territorial governance? She asked Alara directly. Alara's throat went dry. Nothing. I'm a dyer. I work with fabric and color. So you have no political experience, no diplomatic training, no understanding of how any of this works? No. Then what exactly are you bringing to this court? Lady Chen's voice wasn't hostile, just genuinely curious. What value do you add beyond being his bondmate? The question should have destroyed her, should have sent her spiraling into all her old insecurities about being worthless and unqualified. Instead, Alara felt something strange. Clarity. I don't know what value I add to the court, she said slowly. Honestly. But I know what value I add to him. I know that I see things differently than you do. I know that I've spent my entire life being underestimated and learning to survive anyway. I know that I understand what it's like to have nothing and build something from scratch. She paused, met Lady Chen's eyes directly. And I know that I'm not here to replace any of you or prove I'm better than you. I'm here because he chose me. And if that's not enough, if you need me to be something more than what I am to accept me, then you're going to be disappointed, because I'm done pretending to be anything other than exactly who I am. The words fell into silence. Then Lord Heron laughed. It was a dry, creaking sound. Well, at least she's honest. Brutally so, another noble agreed. Is that going to be a problem? Kale's voice was quiet, dangerous. Actually, Lord Heron said slowly, it might be refreshing. We've had enough courtiers who say what they think we want to hear. Maybe what we need is someone who tells the truth, even when it's inconvenient, especially then. Heron's expression was thoughtful. I still think you're making a mistake prioritizing personal bonds over territorial stability, but I respect that you're committing to it, and I respect that she's not trying to manipulate or charm her way into acceptance. So you'll stay? Kale asked. For now. Heron leaned back. But understand this. We're watching. Both of you. And if this bond interferes with governance, if you start making decisions based on personal interest rather than territorial need, we'll remove you permanently. Fair enough. Alara stared at Kale. That's it? Fair enough? He looked at her. What did you expect? I don't know. A fight? An argument? Something other than just accepting their terms? These are reasonable terms. Kale's voice was calm. They're not asking me to give you up. They're not asking me to hide the bond. They're just asking me to actually do my job, which I can do. Can you? The question came from Lady Chen. Kale met her eyes. Yes, because for the first time in 9 years, I actually want to. Before, ruling was just duty, just responsibility, something I had to do because I was good at it. But now I have a reason to make this work, a reason to build something stable and lasting, because I want her to have a home here. And that means creating a territory worth living in. The logic was strange, backwards even, but somehow it made sense. He was going to be a better ruler because he had something to protect, someone to build for, not in spite of the bond, but because of it. The council seemed to reach the same conclusion. One by one, they nodded. "We'll support this," Lord Heron said finally, cautiously, with significant oversight. "But we'll support it." Cale's hand tightened around Alara's. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Don't thank us yet." Heron's voice was dry. "We still have to figure out how to integrate a dyer into court politics. That should be entertaining." Alara felt a laugh bubbling up despite herself. Hysterical, exhausted, but real. She'd done it. She'd faced them. Been honest. Survived. And they hadn't destroyed her. The months that followed were harder than Alara had imagined and easier than she'd feared. Hard because court politics were brutal and complex, and she had no training for any of it. Easy because Cale meant what he'd said about not asking her to change who she was. She kept her workshop, set it up in the eastern wing of the castle, much to the horror of several nobles who thought dye work was beneath court dignity. She worked every day, producing fabric that slowly started appearing in court functions, being purchased by nobles who appreciated quality even if they looked down on the maker. She learned to navigate social dynamics, not by becoming someone else, but by being so genuinely herself that people didn't know what to do with her. She didn't manipulate or charm, she just stated facts, told truths, refused to play games. It was surprisingly effective, and slowly, so slowly she barely noticed, she started to believe she belonged there. Not because of Kyle, but because she'd earned it, because she contributed,